I need it! I need it! Let's go! The guy!
Turks, Cenk Uygur, Yasmin Olaya Khan with you guys. Yasmin's also on Rebel headquarters. You're checking that out on YouTube. We know it. Also with us is Ange Plumbo. So I, of course, never get the handles quite right. But thank you for joining on TYT.com. All right. Now, on the show today, tons of news. So number one, we've got a deal. We've got a deal as long as we can keep it, as Benjamin Franklin would say. The critical parts of that we'll explain to you in a minute. And then later in the program, Trump brags about killing freedom of speech. I thought he ran on it. So we'll give you the exact quotes, you'll see with your own eyes. And then apparently a prominent right-wing host online, although honestly, I hadn't heard much about him, is now advocating for using immigrants as slave labor. So this is where we are, America. All right, having said that, Yas, good to see you. And
good
let
to
us
see
know.
you. Yeah, I feel like it's been a while.
Yeah, a little bit, okay. And I feel like every time we tune in, your background's a little different.
You should see what I have going on in like this side, this corner of the room. It's very crazy in here, but I always try to keep it somewhat neatened up back here.
Yeah, it feels, yeah, I mean, I know you're in Texas. It does feel like that room has some Southern charm to it.
Well, I think it's also like this feels like my house that I grew up in Connecticut actually. And I didn't notice that I was like redoing my house to feel like my old house, but my younger brother pointed it out to me. He's like, this feels like your New England house.
Well, look, you're on a well-tread path at the Young Turks because John Iadarola, also Connecticut to Texas product, having grown up in Connecticut, that went to University of Texas and then came here. Anyways, all right, we got a huge story, so let's do it.
All right, let's roll the tape on this first story. It's a big one.
Looking ahead, what guarantees Hamas disarms and that Israel doesn't resume bombing once the hostages are released?
The first thing we're doing is getting our hostages back, okay? And that's what people wanted more than anything else. They wanted these hostages back that have lived in hell like nobody has ever even dreamt possible. And after that, we'll see. But they've agreed to things, and I think it's going to move along pretty well.
But what is phase two? When does it begin?
I'm not going to talk about that.
Well, the Israeli government is set to vote any minute now on the first phase of Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. And as you can see, he is already claiming all of this as a victory for himself. We're going to get into all the details of the plan. But first, Cenk, this isn't the first time that we've heard of talks of a deal. Do you feel like this is any different this time around?
Well, it's definitely different because significant promises have been made. And my guess is that those promises will be broken nearly instantaneously by Israel. So then the question becomes, what does Donald Trump and the United States of America do once Israel inevitably violates this peace deal? So let's tell you about the parameters of the deal. How much of Gaza are they keeping for now? How much are they going to keep later? When will they actually withdraw? And what are going to be the consequences if they violate the peace deal? So let's get into it.
All right, well, the ministers in the Israeli government, they're expected to approve the ceasefire deal with a strong majority, but as of right now, that has not been confirmed. Benjamin Netanyahu's office is saying that once the deal is signed, a ceasefire would begin within 24 hours. Additionally, a 24-hour deadline will be imposed for Israeli forces to initially pull back to retain control of 53% of the Gaza Strip. And that feels like a lot to me. Officials did not elaborate on the lines Israeli forces would pull back to, but the White House plan indicates further withdrawals to around 40%, then 15%. That final stage would be a security perimeter that would remain until Gaza is properly secure from any resurgent terror threat. But that phase of the deal has not been hammered out yet. And as of right now, it is all incredibly vague. So we're still waiting for more clarity on what's going on here. After the first 24 hours and the IDF's partial retreat, Hamas will have 72 hours to release the living hostages, of which there are believed to be 20 hostages. The expectation is that they will be released by Monday. The return of the bodies and of 28 deceased hostages would follow, but the timeline for that is not yet clear. So under Trump's framework, Israel would release 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences and some 1,700 people detained from Gaza since October 7th, 2023, including all women and children who were detained. So hundreds of trucks carrying humanitarian aid will also start entering Gaza. What a relief. Today, Trump said that he plans to visit the Middle East early next week to personally sign the ceasefire deal. And while the signing of the agreement could be a great development, Israel is already signaling that any upcoming ceasefire will be precarious at best, which is not very encouraging. So Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz directed the IDF to respond with great force to any threat or attack by Hamas on Israeli forces during the interim stage of the ceasefire deal. And that's what he told the Israeli media on Thursday. Hamas officials say Trump verbally guaranteed that Israel would not resume bombing Gaza after hostages are released, but Israel has made no such promise. And today, when Trump was asked what security guarantees the US will make in Gaza, he provided no specifics, saying only that he will work with very wealthy countries to make Gaza as good as possible. The Riviera of the Middle East, I believe he said. There's still a lot that's up in the air about Trump's 20-point peace plan beyond the hostage release. And negotiations on the second phase of the deal will focus on disarmament of Hamas, which has been a sticking point, and Israeli withdrawal to secure the perimeter and day after governance of the Gaza Strip. So still a lot of moving parts that we're working with here, Cenk. Again, there is progress being made, which is good. Not just the release of those 20 hostages, and also the deceased bodies of the hostages that were did not survive all this onslaught in Gaza, but also the release of a lot of the people who were abducted from Palestine and were being kept in Israel. That is progress. No one's mad about any of that, but it does feel, I think the word was precarious, right? It all feels very on shaky ground. Nobody is making any definitive promises. So we've seen Israel defy peace deals and ceasefires in the past. So I would like to think that this time is different, but I'm having a hard time. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah. So, all right, there's a couple of parts of this that are super important. So first, am I happy about it? Yeah, as I've said many times, I want the hostages back. I don't want Hamas to run Gaza. So there's no downside in that case. You know, the prisoner exchanges, the people Hamas is getting back, I don't know them. That's not my primary concern. Marwan Barghouti is actually a person who could make peace. That is the main relevant person that Israel has, and if he's released, and he could actually be a force for peace negotiations to get to a two-state solution, that would be important. But mainly the issue here is Israel going to actually withdraw, and how much are they going to withdraw? How much of Gaza are they planning to keep? And then will they continue to bomb Gaza? So Trump gave an assurance to Hamas that this war was, quote, once they sign the peace deal and return the hostages, is, quote, fully and completely ended. Okay, now I would be shocked, I'll fall out of this chair, if Israel never bombs Gaza again and fully withdraws at some point. I know it's not gonna happen immediately. We gave you the numbers a second ago, I'll come back to that, right? But if they actually do what they promised, it's inconceivable. It's like never happened, never. and certainly hasn't happened in the last 2 years, right? So it'll be shocking. Let me be fair. No, I shouldn't say never. Never with this government, right? Israel did make a peace treaty with Egypt, and both sides did keep that peace treaty intact. So in years past, there were actual peace treaties, and they were amazingly successful. So, but this current government is run honestly by a bunch of crazed genocidal lunatics, and they've proven it over the last 2 years. I mean, there's no amount of Palestinian blood that is enough for them. So I can't imagine a scenario where they wouldn't continue to bomb Gaza. So here, for example, why do I say that? Among hundreds of examples, the latest one is this week. I gave Trump a little bit of credit because after the peace deal was announced the first time around, he said to Israel, okay, that's it, stop bombing. And Israel said, okay, after they bombed for 3 more hours, and then after the 3 hours, they're like, okay, I think we murdered enough for today, we'll listen to Trump. And then right after that, after the press reported that, they went right back to bombing. You know, they bombed Gaza today. They keep slaughtering people every single day. So if you didn't hear it, doesn't mean that they didn't do it. They're continuing like the mass murder in Gaza. So they're addicted to violence. They're a terrorist state that can't stop doing terrorism. And why are they doing it? Just because they're evil? No. I mean, this cabinet that they have is, I mean, if evil exists, it's clearly Israel's current cabinet, right? But I'm not interested in evil. I'm interested in actions, why they're acting, how can we get them to stop, how do we get to peace, etc. So in this case, Yazra, to you, first of all, in the beginning, they keep 53% of Gaza. What happened? I thought it was about the hostages. You got your hostages back, you did your self-defense, you leveled all of Gaza, you committed a genocide. What else do you need? Why? Oh, you want the land. And now all of a sudden, conveniently, after the peace deal and after your genocide, you have more than half of Gaza. Now they claim they're going to withdraw to 40%, which is already an abomination, and then to 15%. First of all, no. An independent Palestine, all of Gaza, all of the West Bank. Look, we've got into details before about right of return, etc. Palestinians have to give up real and sizable things in order to get that peace deal. I'm very realistic and practical about it. But if at the end of this, Israel keeps anywhere from 15 to 53% of Gaza, they're going to think mission accomplished. We used October 7th, which was allowed to happen. I mean, there's tons and tons of stories about how a tiny little country, they couldn't get across that country in 6 hours. The IDF, legendary IDF. Oh, where did I put my gun? Oh, let me go find it. Well, you know what, I'll wait 4 hours and then I'll go find it and go. Anyways, but either way, whether you think October 7th was like, oh my God, they were so fully prepared, but golly gee, this was the one time on the IDF was just like catastrophically negligent, right? Okay, no, but it doesn't really matter. Even if you believe that, or you think that October 7th was a convenient and something that they wanted to use as an excuse to grab land, it doesn't matter. Either way, we said when they started this, everybody said, oh, self-defense. They should get to kill a lot more Palestinians, way more. And they're doing it because, oh, they're the victims. Now, by the way, on October 7th, they really were the victims, okay? So we said relatively early on, no, they're going to take the land. And everybody said, anti-Semite, that's a trope. Is it really, is it a trope? That Jewish people go and take land? That's not even a trope. That's not a thing. Jewish people have never done that before. And this isn't Jewish people, this is the government of Israel, right? So it doesn't matter. We said that they were going to take land, and everybody, all of Israel said, oh, outrageous. Right? Well, now they're saying, yeah, of course we're going to take land. At a bare minimum, we're going to take 15% of Gaza, but probably we'll take way more. And I'd be surprised if they didn't go beyond 53%, because the whole point of this was to steal half of Gaza. And so, I mean, we're celebrating a peace deal because we're hoping against hope that Israel will stop bombing, although they never do. And we're happy that the hostages are back. But at the end of the day, Israel is going to wind up with exactly what they wanted, which is a ton of Palestinian land. Golly gee, that just happened to happen. They didn't want it. The Palestinians made Israel take their land. And all of American media will repeat that. The Palestinians made the Israelis take their land. The Palestinians are anti-Semitic, and that's why they need to be murdered. Wait, isn't it bigoted to say that about Muslims? Shut up, nobody cares about Muslims. You guys are all anti-Semites, keep killing, right? So that's my guess as to what's gonna happen. Israel isn't gonna give up an inch of the 53%. They're gonna try to get 60 and 70 and the whole thing. And one more thing is, so of course they are, by the way, like I said, they keep bombing, right? So when Trump told them to stop bombing, they ignored Trump. So when they ignore Trump this time, the real point of action, the turning point, the decisive point, is going to be when Israel says, oh, Hamas didn't turn themselves in enough. They didn't turn in enough weapons. No matter how many weapons they turn in, I guarantee, 100% guarantee, Israel will say they didn't turn in enough. How do we determine it? It's totally made up by Israel. So there's no way to determine it. So at that point, when they go back to bombing, taking land, etc., will Trump go, look guys, I said fully and completely ended. You are to stop bombing. That was the whole point of the peace deal. And you are to withdraw to your security perimeter, right? Then, and if you don't, we're gonna end your funding. Well, then I'll give Trump a world of credit. And if he gets the Israelis to comply, yeah, I mean, then we're having a conversation about peace prizes, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you really get the peace prize if you get 2 independent states, but okay. But if on the other hand, once Israel violates the deal, if Trump goes, I got the hostages back, that was the main thing, I got the, so who cares about the Palestinians? Where's my money? Where's my money, Israeli lobby? Okay, yeah, go keep killing him. If he does that, then he was a con man, and he will have betrayed the Palestinians, violated every promise, and then tell the American people, no, we serve Israel, and we will allow them to do anything. And the whole peace deal was just a con job to get the Palestinians to give the Israelis more land. Then if he does that, then he's gonna get caught. Even his own base will be like, come on, brother. I mean, how much are you gonna kiss these guys' asses? So that's in the future, and we don't know that yet, but I'm afraid we're gonna find out soon.
Yeah, I mean, we still have a lot to keep an eye on with this situation, and even with this peace deal that I guess we're about to get, I don't feel as though this is over, and I would love for that to not be the case, but it's just I don't see it happening. I remember, earlier today when we were talking about this story with the producers, I was like, why is this one any different from the previous peace deals or ceasefires that we've seen over there? Because we know that they don't always keep the ceasefire. And we know that they have, a lot of this comes down to language, and I hate to diminish something that is so visceral to something like language, but whenever you exist within a space where there's like a lot of vague language that's being used, you can use that to justify all manner of things. And that's actually a point that's gonna become relevant in a later story that we're gonna cover on this show. But we're looking at 20 hostages that are going to be released from Gaza, but we also have 250 prisoners who are serving life sentences in Israel, and we also have 1,700 detainees in Israel. But those are detainees, they're not hostages. So I guess that's the difference, and I guess that's why 20 is so much worse than 1,700 plus 250. Also, they're finally going to allow aid to go through. That's nice, especially considering what we just all saw happen with the global Samud flotilla and what happened specifically to Greta Thunberg. And she has been out very vocal about not even specifically talking about what's happening to her, but talking specifically about the fact that they were there trying to deliver humanitarian aid to a war-torn nation, and Israel decided that they own all those waters and stopped them and boarded them and then tortured them. So also, Cenk, this is, I can't tell if this is like a relevant point to make. So I'll just throw this in, I'll throw it out there for whoever wants to take it. But the Republicans, they're so mad right now about Bad Bunny performing at the Super Bowl. And the reason that they're giving it, because they can't say that it's because they're racist or because they don't understand that Puerto Ricans are actually American or whatever. The reason is that Bad Bunny is a bad role model for children, and won't someone think of the children, right? And it's such a ridiculous argument, but I guess it's the only one that they have. Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson, he's the one who came out and said that. he's the one who is also not allowing Congress to vote on the release of the Epstein file. So he doesn't care about children that much. Also, they don't care about all of these Palestinian children that are being bombed and killed and dismembered and orphaned. They only care about the children that are going to be, subjected to Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl. And like, I don't know. Again, it's not relevant. It's not the most important point. But that was the thing that stood out to me. It's like, how can you not care about these babies? But yeah. I mean, I really do hope that something good comes from this.
So I thought you were going in this direction with it. I mean, bad role model. You worried about Bad Bunny. How about Netanyahu? We're claiming he's such a wonderful special ally of ours. Oh, here's a role model that murdered 20,000 children. I think it's a little bit, even if you hate Bad Bunny, pretty sure Netanyahu is worse. But on the other hand, to be fair to some portions of the right wing, they've now turned on Netanyahu and are not fans at all, right? So, I mean, if the world shares one opinion, it is that we loathe Benjamin Netanyahu. Which leads me to my final couple points here, which is, look, when Israel violates the peace deal, and look, guys, the reason I'm guaranteeing it is because the so-called surrender of Hamas is so vague. It's like they have to put numbers on it. If they don't put numbers on it, they don't put something on it. Israel will definitely, there is no world where Israel says, oh, they surrendered enough. There's no way they're ever gonna say that. So it's a guarantee they're gonna violate. Anyway, so when they violate the peace deal, especially after people think it's a real peace deal. I mean, there's people that are Gazans that are talking about going back into Gaza, because part of the deal is the people of Gaza can now go in and out as they please, within bounds of reason. Of course, it's still an occupation, and Israel is still their tyrants that oversee them. But they're not supposed to push the Palestinians out, and they're supposed to allow them to re-enter. And people are like, oh my God, I'm gonna go back to Gaza, or we're gonna rebuild Gaza. And when that hope is crushed, I think Israel is underestimating the fury of the world. I think that they're thinking, so what? We control everyone. Everybody's complaining in America, online, blah, blah, blah. Tucker Carlson, Young Turks, blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, we lost the right wing base. Oh, the left wing, 92% of them now are against us. So what? We have 90% of Congress. We have 100% of mainstream media. So what, right? We have all of the power. Look, brother, I don't know how it ends, but I know that when you lose 95% of the world's population, that's not gonna end well for you. And so, look, I hope nothing bad happens to the civilians in Israel, et cetera. And I don't know what bad means, but I do know that at some point, whether we like it or not, there's usually consequences in nature when everyone around you thinks you're the most evil thing on earth, and they're watching you slaughter kids on air, right? We see it with our own eyes. And if you keep going like that, I don't know what happens to that worldwide rage. I know that a lot of Israelis and honestly a lot of Jewish people have been taught, oh, the world hates you anyway. They all want to kill you. They're all anti-Semites. They're gonna kill you. They're gonna kill you. They hate you. They hate you. They get taught that, and it's so destructive. No, the world didn't hate you. Netanyahu and this current sick government made the world hate you. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to be like, oh, you murdered 20,000 kids, bravo? No, of course people are gonna react. Wouldn't have mattered if Cambodia did it, if China did it, Peru did it, or Israel did it. Of course, you're gonna be very angry at any country that creates that kind of massive injustice. And then what happens with that anger? I don't know, but they're playing with fire, and Netanyahu is the most arrogant, sick man of my lifetime. Last thing is, Barghouti is not part of this deal. I want to be clear about that. What I'm saying is, Barghouti is a super relevant Palestinian figure who can actually get to peace, and that is why Israel has made it clear he will not be part of this deal. He will not be released. The guys who committed crimes, yeah, go ahead, right? We'll just round them up tomorrow. The 17, I don't care. The 250 that were on death row, that's Hamas's business, okay? The 1,700 that Israel detained, they're just like, just round up people. Who cares? They have 20 hostages. Let's take 2,000 hostages. We're Israel. We're allowed to do whatever we want. So I'm glad those guys are coming home. But the most important guy is the guy who can make peace, and that's why Israel will not be releasing him, because this current government of Israel has absolutely no interest in peace. And you'll see with your own eyes, they'll prove me right. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got a lot more disasters ahead for you guys. Trump brags. I mean, you're going to see it on tape. He brags. Well, yeah, we ended freedom of speech. Didn't you run on freedom of speech? All right, we'll come right back. Back on TYT. Let's go to our members on TYT.com. I lives in America writes in, we love Bad Bunny, we hate Bad BB. Funny. Wang Jun says, one of Netanyahu's advisors went on TV and openly said phase 2 will never happen. And even though I totally understand it, it infuriates me to watch the entire world celebrate peace when we know Israel is already preparing to break it. I feel like we're in the movie Don't Look Up. We're just waiting for that comet to hit. Yeah, at least Gaza is. And look, there's a second issue that is related to this, which is Israel's control over America. And for a long time, the Israelis did a brilliant job of keeping anyone from noticing the obvious, which is, brother, you bought 90% of Congress. It's on the record. You gave them money, they vote with you every time. Not complicated at all. But they have mainstream media on 100% lockdown. So if you say that, mainstream media will be like, even though that is factually true, your life should be ruined for saying things that are true. Our job is to lie to the American people and say Israel's not in control, okay? Israel is in control. And they will continue to use that control over our politicians and our media. The next question is for us as Americans. What are we going to do about it? Because part of it is saving the Palestinians. The other part is freeing us. Okay, and if you think, oh no, that's a trope, I don't care at all. You can take your tropes and do you know what with them, okay? Constantly hiding behind the tropes. Go ahead, buy all of Congress. Oh, because they can't say it. We'll just call them anti-Semites. Okay, yeah, I can't say it. I've said it 100 times. I'm gonna say it 1,000 more times. It doesn't matter if you're Big Pharma or Big Oil or AIPAC. If you donate/legally bribe 90% of Congress, you control Congress. So is there also a trope about Big Pharma controlling Congress? So I'm not interested in your horse crap. Or you could take that crap to mainstream media where they'll eat it up like, oh yeah, Israeli propaganda. And now online media, give me $7,000, oh Israel. All right, anyway, over 9,000 says, as long as the IDF exists in current form, Palestine will never be a state and Palestinians will be in danger worldwide. But it's not just Palestinians that are in danger. Any critic of Israel, they will try to eliminate you. Your career, etc., try to ruin you. The tiny Israeli zealot thugs that exist here in this country and across the world, they try to intimidate anyone who would dare disagree with Israel. Those are the thugs that we have to legally deal with here in America in the right ways, never through physical, never through violence, but through politics and speech. Vida Delsed said, Trump is getting his Nobel Peace Prize before Bibi breaks his promises. Trump is hoping to get that prize before Bibi breaks it, won't make it. Michael Napin says, Yaz should have her own home design show on TYT Network called Design. Okay, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. Also, Lex, thanks for joining, Lex, we appreciate it. Guys, tonight I'm gonna continue our crowdsourcing the revolution. Interesting reactions to it, I'll tell you guys. A whole bunch of you came up with an interesting idea. So we're gonna do that at 8 o'clock Eastern. And then we've got an interview after that. And then we get another little bonus episode. So lots to get to today. Stay right here throughout for all this programming. So Yaz, what's next?
All right, let's get into this next story.
Only days ago, Nick Sauter was assaulted in Portland by a flag-burning mob, and we've made it 1 year penalty for inciting riots. We took the freedom of speech away because that's been through the courts, and the court said you have freedom of speech. But what has happened is when they burn a flag, it agitates and irritates crowds. They've never seen anything like it on both sides, and you end up with riots. So we're going on that basis. We're looking at it not from the freedom of speech, which I always felt strongly about, but never passed the courts.
Well, Trump did a recent press conference where he addressed attacks on freedom of speech, which according to him are coming from him. He is the one who is attacking freedom of speech. He said, in case you missed it, we took the freedom of speech away, just like that, just took it away. So Grok actually confirms beneath that video on X that burning a flag is protected speech in this country, saying flag burning in the US is a constitutionally protected First Amendment right over which the president has no authority. The issue has been litigated numerous times throughout history, culminating in the landmark Supreme Court case, Texas v. Johnson in 1989. So I've got more from this press conference, but first, Cenk, yeah, you're right. He ran on protecting freedom of speech. Half of the podcast bros, especially on the right, who were voting for him, they were the ones who were like, yeah, we want our freedom of speech and he's gonna protect it, even though their freedom of speech was never actually being threatened at the time. They didn't really understand that. Now, here we are, Trump just took it away.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into details of how the Supreme Court has ruled on this and why Trump is wrong on the facts and the law. But most importantly, you all saw him run on freedom of speech, right? I mean, he said it, what, hundreds of times, thousands of times? We gotta protect freedom of speech, and yeah, we hate cancel culture. And you just saw it with your own eyes. Quote, we took the freedom of speech away. So one of the questions I have, just listen to the whole story and find out, by the way, which conservative justice, legendary conservative justices, agreed that this was a freedom of speech issue. And then at the end, if you're on the right or you voted for Trump, tell me how this isn't hypocrisy. Because I don't see how it couldn't be hypocrisy in any other way. I mean, it has to be. So I'm curious whether folks will acknowledge it. But anyway, let's give you the facts of the story and we'll come back and analyze.
Yeah, there's a lot to this story. So in this meeting, Trump, accompanied by his Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, addressed the rampant terrorism that is happening all across this country, perpetuated, of course, by the radical left, and more specifically by Antifa. But the question is, who is Antifa? No one knows. The term Antifa refers to a decentralized movement or ideology representing anyone that is against fascism of any kind. The use of the term goes all the way back nearly 100 years to Nazi Germany, and it has been used many times since then across Europe and Asia whenever authoritative fascist regimes try to assert dominance over the populace. So still, Kristi Noem claims that her ICE agents recently picked up the girlfriend of one of the founders of Antifa. Take a look.
They have been so bold in making sure we're bringing those individuals to justice. One of the individuals we arrested recently in Portland was the girlfriend of one of the founders of Antifa, and that we are hoping that as we go after her, interview her, and prosecute her, we will get more and more information about the network and how we can root them out and eliminate them from the existence of American society.
But this administration, as we were talking about in the previous story, they love to deal in these vague, broad terms. And that is understandable because the more specific terms, they tend to confuse them. So here is a clip of Trump from that same press conference asking who in response to a question about habeas corpus.
Have you given any more thought to possibly suspending habeas corpus to not only deal with these insurrectionists across the nation, but also to continue rapidly deporting illegal aliens?
It's suspending who?
Habeas corpus. So.
Oh. I don't know. I'd rather leave that to Kristi. What do you think?
No, sir, I haven't been a part of any discussions on that.
And it's particularly funny that he asked Kristi Noem about habeas corpus because until recently, she also did not know what it meant.
So Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let
to.
me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
So a lot of this comes down to rhetoric and diction, and that's no accident. It's no accident that Trump and his administration insist that protesters are part of a shadowy, radical leftist underground group called Antifa. It's no accident that they refer to any kind of dissent these days as terrorism. So this is from NBC News. It says, asked about discussions regarding invoking the Insurrection Act, White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson said in a statement, the Trump administration is committed to restoring law and order in American cities that are plagued by violence due to Democrat mismanagement. And President Trump will not stand by while violent rioters attack federal law enforcement officers. The administration will work to protect federal assets and officers while making American cities safe. The act gives the president broad discretion regarding its invocation. It can be invoked at the request of a state or when the president determines that conditions like unlawful obstructions, rebellion, or insurrection have made it difficult to enforce the law. During the civil rights era, 3 presidents, Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Johnson, used the act to protect activists or enforce court orders mandating desegregation. It was last used at the request of California's governor during the 1992 LA riots. So finally, there's one more term that I want to highlight here. That is, you might have seen it in the news. It's plenary authority. First of all, what is it? So plenary, it's the Legal Information Institute of Cornell's Law School defines plenary authority as power that is wide-ranging, broadly construed, and often limitless for all practical purposes. It is most often applied to legislative bodies as when government chooses to levy a tax or expend revenue. Lawmakers do not need to refer to the courts or a higher federal power for authorization to act when they have plenary authority over a matter. So again, very vague, very much up to interpretation what any of that even means. And with the Trump administration calling people terrorists just because they don't abide by the things that ICE are doing, or even what's going on in all these various cities where the National Guard has been deployed. Also saying things are insurrections. We're not all insurrectionists, all right? We saw what an insurrection looks like. We all watched it happen live on January 6th. So watch what happened though when Trump lackey Stephen Miller appeared on CNN and seemingly glitched after mentioning Trump's plenary authority.
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the US Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue.
Okay, so Cenk, before I go to you, I just want to note that even giving Boris Sanchez there from CNN, giving him the benefit of the doubt that he really didn't know what was going on, that he really thought that there was a technical issue, and that is why he didn't press Stephen Miller further on what he had just said. This portion of the interview is no longer available through CNN. They've edited this portion out, and arguably you could say, well, there wasn't anything of substance in that clip, but I think most people would not agree with that assessment because obviously he said something that he feels as though he shouldn't have said. Maybe somebody was speaking to him saying stop, stop, stop in his earpiece. But whatever the case is, I guess, as somebody who is on camera for a living, maybe that's something I can try. If I say the wrong thing, I'll just stop talking and just pretend, just freeze frame. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, we've been doing the Young Turks for 23 years. So there have been a couple of times where politicians pretended that there was something wrong with their earpiece. And those were always hilarious. So look, I don't know what happened there. Maybe there was a technical problem. Maybe he kind of glitched out, as people are saying, because he realized, oh wait, I definitely shouldn't be saying this. It might be something they were planning to make a case for later, but it is curious that he happened to stop right as he was claiming that the president has, as Yaz explained, potentially limitless power, right? And that's when because that's part of the definition of plenary authority, right? And look, one of the things that'll be key in this administration is Stephen Miller is 100% pushing for all the different things we've shown you, including on yesterday's show, of things of calling anyone who they claim is not abiding by American family values, Trump anyway, Christianity, they consider anti-Christian, except now Hegseth's doing a purge of anyone who's ever criticized Charlie Kirk. I mean, this is like ludicrous stuff. And so calling people terrorists, saying you have unlimited authority, saying that there's an insurrection in the country. Really, right now, there's an insurrection in the country? Right now. Like, you're all worried that the House is gonna be taken over by anti-American forces and you're all bunkering down. There's no insurrection, right? They're using it obviously as an excuse to call the left wing and any Israeli critic terrorists, etc. So how are Trump voters going to respond to that? We know how the left is gonna respond, non-Trump voters are gonna respond. And we know that some portion of Trump voters that are on the right are gonna say, oh yes, finally, limitless power, right? And screw freedom of speech, and we never meant it. We just want to crack down on the left. We hate them so much, and we want to use the power. But that is not all of the right, and that is not all of Trump voters. So the folks that are movable, at least a third of Trump voters, but I think even larger, are they just gonna be like, oh yeah, the big government taking away our rights, and now the president has plenary authority, and I'm going to pretend there's an insurrection, and I love that there's military in the streets, and Oracle's founder talking about how we're all going to be monitored and all the citizens must behave, and now all of a sudden I love government tyranny. Or are they going to be like, wait a minute, we've been took. Okay, speaking of which, on whether Trump lied to you or not, by the way, he's a politician. Do the math, right? But okay. He said in the first clip we showed you in this segment, we're gonna take freedom of speech away. Let me go to a couple of clips from, here's one from 2002. Let's see if Trump was consistent. Let's watch.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple. Just like dominoes, one by one, they'll go down. The censorship cartel must be dismantled and destroyed, and it must happen immediately. The fight for free speech is a matter of victory or death for America and for the survival of Western civilization itself.
So if you take freedom of speech away, it's the death of America and the end of Western civilization. I'll remind you, he just said, quote, we took the freedom of speech away. Okay, now, if you say, well, no, flag burning is not freedom of speech. First of all, the Supreme Court has ruled that way. Antonin Scalia, the most conservative justice of my lifetime, voted with the liberal justice, so did other conservatives, in saying, yeah, we hate flag burning, that's not the issue. The issue is, are you allowed to say it? We hate the N-word, we hate any kind of bigotry, racism, etc. But it doesn't mean you're not allowed to say it. The whole point of freedom of speech is to say unpopular things, right? So, but even if you were to say, okay, look, I don't think it's freedom of speech to burn a flag, even if the Supreme Court disagrees, even if the Constitution disagrees. But the question is, what does Trump think? Because Trump said earlier, if you take away freedom of speech, the country dies. And today he's saying, we took freedom of speech away. So he thinks it's freedom of speech and he's taking it away. If you're still not convinced that this was like the biggest issue for Donald Trump, here's one more clip from the past.
We will always protect free speech on college campuses. I am going to work very hard to protect free speech for all Americans. We will restore free speech, which we don't have now. After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
You just saw with your own eyes, he did the exact opposite. And that's not all. You know, he attacks anyone who he thinks is criticizing him. There's a politician going around, I don't like Jimmy Kimmel making jokes about me. I don't like Stephen Colbert making jokes about me. Come on, guys. That's the guy that you want to support? Okay, forget the guy. Do you have principles? Did you believe in freedom of speech? Now, people often on the right will say, oh yeah? Well, when the Democrats were in charge, were you in favor of freedom of speech? Well, we've got tens of thousands of videos proving that we were in favor of freedom of speech and against cancel culture under Democrats, under Republicans. We have been consistent and principled on this from day one. So is the right wing going to be principled, or are they going to trash their principles and go, oh, if Trump's taking away freedom of speech, oh, I love it. Okay, yeah, Joe, no comics allowed. We hate, no jokes. No jokes about us. Make jokes about the Democrats, but not us. That's your freedom of speech, okay? And that's it. Anyone who criticizes Trump, we're going to take FCC. We're going to look into their license. Let's take their license away. Let's take their speech away. Not only freedom of speech, but freedom of press. Anyway, Trump has admitted it, so you see it. Look, the last two things here are, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because freedom of speech is so important. But look at the other two things. One is silly, the other one's super serious. The wife of Antifa. Now look, I know a lot of people on the right believe that Antifa is like this nefarious giant network of leftists and they're all coordinating, being paid by China and Qatar and whatever else that they imagine in their lives, okay? I don't know who Antifa is. From time to time, actually many years ago, a couple of people popped up and they said they were Antifa. Where are they today? I don't know. Who are they? I don't know. Have I ever run into a single person who claimed to be Antifa at the million left-wing conferences I've ever gone to? Never, right? Have I ever seen a leader? No. But now you caught the wife of the leader of Antifa or the founder? So who is it? Who's the so-called founder of Antifa, right? So guys, I know a lot of you on the right will not, and I address the left and the right. I assume the whole country's watching. I know it's not necessarily the case, but I want to address all of you guys. And so for the right guys, like I know you think that exists and that it's like some super nefarious group, etc. But it ain't, brother. There are randos that you don't like. Of course, there are protesters you don't like. There are people who cause property damage, etc. that you don't like. That's real, right? Some organized thing funded by other folks, etc. It ain't real. I don't know if you'll ever believe that, okay? But now let's go to the last thing, because that's kind of a silly one. The most important one, other than freedom of speech. Habeas corpus is probably the single most important part of Western civilization. So that goes not just to the US Constitution, it goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. And so what it is the the government must present someone. It means presenting their body, it's a Latin term. You can't just whisk someone away, a tyrannical government, and never charge them and say, I'm gonna put them in prison for no reason, and I don't have to explain myself to the people. No, you must show them, you must show evidence against them, otherwise the state cannot take away their freedom. And you saw clear as day in those two clips, Trump has no idea what habeas corpus is. How can you, if you could be a plumber and not know habeas corpus, you could be a really smart heart surgeon and not know habeas corpus because you're not into politics or you're not a lawyer, etc. But you're the president, you don't know what habeas corpus, the foundation of Western civilization is? And then, okay, you can say, well, maybe he knew, but he said he didn't know and he kicked it off to someone else. But Christine Ohm, you saw it with your own eyes. She has no idea what habeas corpus is. The answer she gave was totally incorrect. She's the head of the Department of Homeland Security. Even at this late date, I'm stunned by their ignorance. So look, I don't need you to be a rocket scientist and I don't need you to be like a PhD in whatever, right? But you gotta know the bare minimum if you're gonna run the government.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you would hope so, but I can't help but feel as though Trump has put certain people in power in government specifically because they didn't know what they were doing, so that they're not going to get in his way whenever he decides to do whatever he wants to do. And I think I was talking about this in a Rebel HQ video recently. But with George W. Bush, when he became president back in the year 2000, right? Y2K, what a time that was. There was a lot of talk about how stupid he was, right? He didn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. And if only we knew what was coming for us. But at the time, the rhetoric that we kept hearing, the consolation that we kept telling ourselves was that, he might not be the brightest person in the room, but he surrounds himself with good people. They all know what they're doing and they're gonna guide him on the right path, right? We forgot about Dick Cheney. We didn't take him into consideration, or John Bolton and a few of these other people, but that's what we told ourselves. With Donald Trump, the people that he had in his administration in the first term, a lot of them, from what we hear, they did prevent him from doing the worst thing, right? They prevented him from acting on his absolute worst impulses. This time around, Trump has gotten rid of so many of those people, right? Deliberately, he put Pete Hegseth, just the most obvious example, as the head of the Department of Defense. And that on its own is like, he doesn't know what he's doing. We can all see that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's made rookie mistakes that are so rookie that even people like me who have never served in the military can look at it and be like, why'd you do that? Why didn't you know not to do that? But that is who we have running our government right now. But something else about freedom of speech, it always kind of fascinates me how someone like Trump can just go do a rally and say, I'm gonna protect freedom of speech because it's being attacked right now. We don't have freedom of speech right now. And people just nod in agreement, like, yeah, he's right. Even though, like, no, their freedom of speech was never threatened until right now under the Trump administration. Freedom of speech has never been threatened the way it is right now. And he straight up said, we just got rid of it. He just said, I don't think that this counts, and I just got rid of that. And they're still doing this thing where they're just telling people what reality is, and then people just believe it, despite the fact that they can look and they can see for themselves that what they're being told is not the truth. And when I was doing this story, I didn't include this part, but with the Trump administration targeting all these blue cities, the people on right-wing media and from the administration, they keep telling people that these cities are literally on fire. Trump really thinks that Portland is on fire right now, and that all these Democrat-run cities are overrun with crime and drugs. It's just everywhere and it's rampant. And they get away with telling people this because the majority of their supporters and their audience members don't live in those cities. So they just believe what they're told about them. Meanwhile, they're also being told that despite the actual footage contradicting what they're saying, that ICE is not, straight up abducting people off of the streets and taking people out of their homes. But an interesting clip that, again, I didn't include it in this story, but you can find it online. Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, who is a progressive Gen Z, she's running for Congress to represent Chicago. She actually was at one of these ICE protests, and she was thrown on the ground and she was physically abused by ICE agents. And she went on News Nation to tell them about her personal experience, what she literally saw herself with her own eyes, what she experienced herself, the abuse she experienced. And she went on News Nation, and the host just kept telling her, no, that's not what you saw. That's not what happened. That's not what is happening. And it was so bad that by the end of the interview, she just stopped talking to the host entirely and just addressed the audience straight on and said, you know what? He can say whatever he wants, but this is what I'm telling you I saw. So.
Yep. All right, we got to take a break, guys. So when we come back, now some right-wing influencers are arguing that we should take protesters and use them as slave labor. And that's if you don't kill them first. So that insanity when we return. All right, let's go to Super Chat. Deb Long, yes, Letitia James has been indicted. We're gonna get to that story in a little bit. Yeah, Trump's cray. Anyway, Stormborn Stungler, thank you for your generosity. Really appreciate it. Wrote in a couple of times. The way US politicians kneel for Netanyahu, you'd think he invented democracy or at least their campaign funds. Well, that part's definitely true. Capitol Hill isn't just a building, it's a Zionist seance haunted by the ghosts of war criminals and lobbyist cash. No lie detected. Stormborn Snuggler says, according to Raw Story, Trump, Rubio, and Hegseth could face ICC secret sealed warrants for targeting narco-terrorists, in quotes. Legal experts warn they risk arrest in ICC nations like France or Japan. Like Duterte, Trump's actions may be labeled crimes against humanity. So as I explained before, they're being very flippant about war crimes and killing civilians in international waters with no due process is not acceptable. That being said, the idea that one of our allies in Europe is going to arrest Trump or Hegseth, well, the world is a very different world if that happens, okay? But that is very unlikely at this point. So look, sometimes people like to rile everybody up. Oh, we're gonna get Trump. Oh, he's gonna be arrested by France any day now. No, don't believe the hype, right? I mean, if Trump or Hegseth would ever be arrested for war crimes, I mean, it'd have to be a different country and a different planet, and it would have to be like 20 years from now. Doing it now, there's no way in the world that the European countries would do that. I'm just being real with you. All right, Stormborn Snugler wrote in one more time. Yet voters in Fox News still blindly support these individuals. People who enter politics without even a basic understanding of the Constitution or the laws they're supposed to uphold. The least they could do is a quick Google search before making decisions that affect millions. You know, I've said that many times. It's stunning how little preparation they have. Stunning how no research, no homework, no knowledge. It's just depressing. All right, let's go to YouTube members. Andy Meon 2300 says, as far as Israel is concerned, Hamas will exist as long as there is any Palestinian male between 10 and 50 years old left alive. I am worried that you are accurate about that. Amy Meganson says, I think based on the clip you showed, Trump thinks the problem with the Israeli war is just the prisoners. I get the feeling that he doesn't realize that the genocide is the actual main issue. I'm also worried about that. Acid Brad on Twitch says, calling people terrorists or insurrectionists sounds like Trump is taking a page out of the Israel playbook. I'm super worried about that. Total surveillance, calling all of your enemies terrorists, that's terrible, yes. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. Just one quick comment from a member on TYT.com. True Sight Dragon said, Stephen Miller is the technical issue. And then-
Cenk, are you there? Are you there? What's happened? What's going on?
Cenk, are you there? Are you there, Cenk? Cenk.
He's been there.
Cenk.
Okay, keep going. All right, next story. I don't know who freezes more, Stephen Miller or Mitch McConnell. They probably seem to have a freezing issue. Anyways, all right, go ahead, yes.
We have a defunct government. All right, let's roll the tape on this next story.
As much as I would want them to run over the protesters, I think that would cause issues. And also, if you run over the protesters, I don't really care if they do it or not, but I don't think it's necessary. Only because I would want to utilize their bodies for compelled slave labor.
Well, last Friday, right-wing streamer Zach Hoyt, also known online as Asmongold, he made an interesting argument against ICE agents injuring protesters in cities like Chicago and Portland. Don't run them over because then we can't use them for compelled slave labor. That's what he said. Cenk, your initial thoughts to this?
Yeah, I'm sure he said the same thing about the January 6th protesters. I mean, they're protesters, so I don't mind if you run them over and maybe break their legs, as you're gonna see in the video coming up, or maybe kill them. That's no big deal. So what, you're gonna go protest that Trump lost? Of course they should be able to run you over. But hey guys, I'm not sure we should do it because maybe we should take those Trump fans and use them as slave labor. Now, if a left-winger actually said that and meant it, what do you think the right-wing reaction would be? They would lose their minds. They'd be the angriest people you've ever met. But yet, you're about to see the ass man here tell you the same exact thing about protesters on the other side. Curious what the right-wing reaction is going to be.
All right, well, this suggestion, right, it kind of came about whenever Hoyt was reacting to videos from independent media reporter Brendan Gutenschwager, who's been documenting some of the protests at Broadview, the Broadview ICE facility. For potential copyright reasons, we can't show you the original video that he's reacting to, but just to give you an idea of what Hoyt was reacting to, the description on the original clip reads, protesters attempt to block a vehicle driven by an individual that displayed a DHS badge from advancing towards the Broadview ICE facility. And with that context, we can now hear from him.
I just wonder if even the military can save a place like Deep Blue Portland, as over in Chicago.
They absolutely can. The way that you do it is you take all of these people, you arrest all of them, you charge them with felonies, you change the federal law so people with felonies can't vote in elections, and then you effectively disenfranchise them out of the voting system. That way, nobody has to deal with them anymore. And if they have a problem with that and they cause issues, then you put them in prison and you force them to work. There you go. Problem solved.
Prison labor is always just an easy go-to solution, isn't it? So remember, it is legal to protest and it is protected in the First Amendment unless Trump decides to take that one away too, which he might. Civil disobedience by itself is not a crime and it can obviously lead to illegal conduct that then results in misdemeanors and felonies. But what Hoyt is suggesting is a little bit extreme. So here's more.
Just put spikes on the vehicles. As much as I would want them to run over the protesters, I think that would cause issues. And also, if you run over the protesters, I don't really care if they do it or not, but I don't think it's necessary. Like if a citizen gets their car surrounded, I think they have the right to drive through the protesters. I do, because it's endangering their life and every person has a right to self-defense and self-preservation. That being said, if let's say you run over their leg, well, then we're gonna have to fix their leg and it costs a lot of money. And then you can't make them work in the prison because their leg could be broken or their arm could be broken. So it causes you to lose money in the long term. So I'm not a fan of that.
Mass amounts
only because I would want to utilize their bodies for compelled slave labor. That's the only reason. It's not like I have a moral obligation against it. Absolutely not.
No one would ever accuse somebody like this from having a moral obligation to anything. But to be clear, hitting protesters on purpose could result in a homicide charge, which then is a felony. Reuters reported back in 2020, a driver who deliberately ran over a protester or any pedestrian could face homicide charges and would need to prove that they reasonably believed that they had no alternative in order to avoid death or serious harm to themselves. So it's funny, I think I mentioned this in the last story. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that Kat Abu Ghazali, whenever she was protesting in Chicago against ICE, it was at the Broadview ICE facility. And she says in that News Nation clip that she was trying to prevent someone from getting run over by a vehicle. So like these are real things that are happening. It is totally within the First Amendment right to protest and to be out there. But as I said, Trump just decides what qualifies as a protected freedom here in the United States. He has, whatever he wants, that takes precedent over, 250 years of the Bill of Rights or whatever. So, Cenk, I know you've got more. What do you think?
Yeah, so look, I don't love that tactic of getting in front of cars. I mainly worry about the protesters, because some idiot is gonna run you over. It's just a matter of time. And I look, that people get scared when their car is surrounded. So I don't like people going to their homes. And if you say, hey, Cenk, you're not a good enough activist, and then we like, maybe putting a little fear of God in them or something. It's not for me. I'm the guy for nonviolence, etc. But on the other hand, protests overall, I love. Like that's the most cherished American right there is. And so, and don't get it twisted. Because somebody is, blocking your way in a car, you don't have the right to run them over or kill them or break their leg or drive forward to cause harm to them. And no, your life is not in danger, right? Now, on the other hand, if they're shaking the car and you're worried they're gonna topple it, they're gonna break into the car, they smash the windows, okay, then maybe your life's in. But they just blocked it because they're doing a normal protest. No, you don't have to panic and murder them, okay? That's not the only option you have. Okay, now to the heart of this. You remember when Republicans and right-wingers were saying, hey, these Democrats, they don't have enough civility. They have to turn down the temperature. Their rhetoric is what's causing the violence. Now this brother comes along. I don't know who Ass Man is. I mean, people say maybe that he's got a following, but I've never heard of him, right? And his co-conspirator Jägermeister or whatever, right? And so, but this guy's talking about, oh yeah, run over protesters. I don't mind it, he said. So you don't mind extreme violence, running over somebody with a car, okay? But you know what? Why don't we instead arrest them for exercising one of the most fundamental American rights, freedom of speech. The one, remember, that you guys all pretended you were in favor of? I know some of them meant it, but apparently a lot of them, including Assman and Jägermeister, didn't mean it. They thought, oh, freedom of speech for me, to say that maybe you should be murdered or be made my slave. My freedom of speech, good. And by the way, I wouldn't cancel that. I don't mind him saying the terrible things that he says. Now we know who he is. So, and I'm not afraid of his speech. I'm not afraid that the majority of Americans are gonna look at that and go, oh yeah, well, I think we should, instead of having freedom of speech, if anyone exercises freedom of speech in a way that I don't like politically, we should arrest them, take away all their rights, make sure they can't vote, and then turn them into slaves. No, 98% of Americans are gonna be against that. But Assman thinks that's a great idea. So he's like, oh yeah, I'm for freedom of speech, unless it's left-wingers. How dare they protest our government? Let's take away all their rights. Did you see what he said? Make sure they can't ever vote again. Look, guys, it's a simple standard. Shoe on the other foot. And I've said this a million times on this show. And I usually say in regards to, hey, if you're a Democrat and you're criticizing the right wing, now think about it if the shoe was on the other foot. And I've said it in both directions many, many times. So in this case, if you're a right winger, and if some left winger came out there and said, oh yeah, run over the right wingers that are protesting Biden, run them over with a car. I don't care if you break their leg. Oh, you know what, wait, I have a better idea. I don't mind it, but maybe we turn the right wing in this country into slave labor. We take away their freedom of speech, we take away their voting rights, we arrest them, we ruin their lives, and then turn them into chattel and furniture for us. What do you think your reaction would have been? If you say your reaction would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. The Democrats are in charge, Biden's in charge. And if I protest them, I should be turned into a slave. Okay, then at least you're principled. Okay, you wanna make up some nonsense excuse why it shouldn't be done to the right, but it should be done to the left? Go ahead, and apparently there are a couple of guys in the country who actually believe that. And I don't know if his followers were like, what an idiot. We said freedom of speech, dumbass, okay? Or if they're like, yeah, we hate freedom of speech now that we're in charge, let's turn them into slaves. I mean, really, I don't know. Are 13 people watching that show? Who would like that kind of monstrously un-American piece of crap like that, who doesn't believe in America at all?
It's very difficult to make sense of their values and morals on that side because they're so, I don't know, I was gonna say that they're inconsistent, but really it's just whatever is good for them is what they like, and then they don't want it to happen. They can't apply something to one side that they don't want to apply to the other side, I think is what I'm trying to say. But it's very confusing because there's no consistency as far as values and morals go, especially on the right. What's more interesting is that they still preach and pretend to be the party of family values, and they like good things, and they're good Christians and everything that entails. And the implication there is that we're good Christian people, so we have good morality and high values, and everyone else does not. That is, the part that goes unsaid. But at the same time, they're saying, I'm okay with protesters who are doing something that they are well within their right to do. I'm okay with them getting run over and then using them as slave labor. We can talk about prison labor if you want. That's a whole conversation, and people feel one way about that. But at the same time, that's not what we're doing here, right? We're just, sowing more and more hate over and over and over again. I don't understand why people are mad at protesters. You have the right to protest, right? If people find you annoying for protesting, then that's one thing, but being annoying is not something that you can outlaw. That is not something that is illegal to be, right? And so whenever we have people who are saying things like this, I don't consume content like this. I can't imagine that Gold, whatever his name is, I can't imagine that he is watching this show right now either. But it just doesn't seem helpful. Not that I think he's trying to be helpful, but there has to be some kind of higher purpose to doing work like this, right? You have to care about something a little bit. You have to have some kind of moral basis or just some reason as to why you're doing what you are doing whenever you're sitting there talking about these things. And maybe the shallow answer is that you're doing it because the pay is really good, right? Maybe these people are making so much money doing what they're doing. Maybe they're getting paid by whoever their donors are, thousands of dollars a month, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a month from what we've heard from others. And maybe that is all it takes to motivate them in one direction. But at the end of the day, it's been 10 years of this. Aren't you tired of just saying the same thing over and over and over again, sticking to your inane talking points and sowing hate and discord in a country? Wouldn't it just be nicer if we could all just get back to a place of something resembling normalcy? Aren't we tired by now? I am very tired.
Yeah, last 2 quick points here. Yeah, of course he's doing it for the attention. There's now this a cottage industry now, folks. We're look at me, daddy, look at me. I'm saying the dumbest thing on the internet. Okay, congratulations, you must be so proud. But unfortunately, the algorithms also reward that. If you are more extreme, the algorithm likes it more and it rewards it. So we've got a toxic situation on a lot of these platforms. But one quick note I wanted to make, you said, a lot of these people think that they're good Christians. And some of the right wing I challenge, for example, hey, if you're pro-life, why aren't you concerned about the 20,000 kids Israel killed in Gaza? But you know what happened? Then some pro-life people, Tom Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, et cetera, started saying, yeah, wait a minute, I'm not in favor of anybody killing kids. Why are we paying for Israel to kill kids? And I was all right, attaboy, that is, we could disagree on other things, but that is what a good Christian would say, right? Especially if you're pro-life. And obviously there are a lot of good Christians that believe in a variety of things. In this case, I don't know what their religion is, and I don't really care. In fact, I was wondering, wait, are these guys normally pro-Israel? And I don't know that either, because I've never heard of Assman and the Jägermeister. But if they're pro-Israel, then I worry a little bit is this setting up for, if you protest Israel's control of America, no, that's it. You agreed to it. You agreed to protesters can be run over or turned into slaves. Now, and you protested Israel, that's it, slave labor, right? We took away your voting rights. So now if you want to vote against Israel, you're not allowed to. I don't know, I really, really, really don't know. But it doesn't really matter. Does it matter if they do it for Israel or for their own purposes or for Timbuktu? It doesn't matter. Are you an American and do you believe in this country? Because the First Amendment is not unclear. We all have a right to not only speech, not only press, but to actually protest, to ask the government for a redress of our grievances. It's in the First Amendment. So if you don't believe in the right to protest and the right to freedom of speech, you might technically be an American by birth, but as a matter of principles, as a matter of who you are, you don't actually believe in this country. You want a different kind of country that's tyrannical, and you're deeply un-American.
Yeah.
All right, we're way over time. We gotta go. All right, so Yaz, you're awesome. Thank you so much. And when we come back, guys, yes, Letitia James has been indicted, and Donald Trump accidentally admitting that it's totally political is amazing, because he can't help himself, verbal diarrhea. Anyway, so we're gonna explain that when we return. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think, my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was 2 cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all 3 cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh, and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the 3rd car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, for this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like this, I hit 3 cars, I don't know. So you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so 1, my bad, really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
Favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Tank and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
The people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning. They seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
This was my ass.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur and Sharon Reed with you guys. Sharon's on Rebel Headquarters. That's also on YouTube. You can check that out. Sharon, you got a lot of news for us. What do you got first?
Let's see. Well, why don't we start with Tech Challenge, Cenk? After repeated demands from Donald Trump to prosecute one Letitia James, Justice Department has officially followed suit. New York Attorney General, who successfully sued Trump in a civil case for business fraud, has now been indicted by a Virginia grand jury on at least one count of bank fraud. DOJ is accusing her of committing mortgage fraud when she purchased a property in Virginia. That was in 2023. Federal officials have been investigating whether James lied on loan documents for a house she purchased in Norfolk, 2023. In that paperwork, she said the home would be her primary residence, even as she served as Attorney General in New York. Washington Post with the reporting. James's attorney has described those errors as honest mistakes and said James has presented evidence showing that she purchased the home for a niece and had not intended to improperly secure a better mortgage rate by declaring it her primary residence. Now then there's Lindsay Halligan. She's a loyalist prosecutor Trump recently installed in the Eastern District of Virginia. She presented the case against James to a grand jury in Alexandria. Prosecutors allegedly called James's niece to appear before the grand jury, but sources say the niece gave testimony that would bolster James's case that she did not commit fraud. Case is also under seal. It's impossible to know what other alleged evidence Halligan has against Letitia James, but reporting indicates even people within Halligan's office were skeptical of the case. 3 days ago, MSNBC reported a top prosecutor in Halligan's office, Elizabeth Usey, was resisting pressure to ask a grand jury to charge James. Usey, who oversees major criminal prosecutions in the Norfolk office of the Eastern District of Virginia, has confided to coworkers that she sees no probable cause to believe James engaged in mortgage fraud. That, according to the two sources, who told this to MSNBC. But Donald Trump has been pressuring prosecutors nonstop to go after her, posting on social media without citing any evidence that she's, quote, guilty as hell, and telling reporters at the White House, looks to me like she's really guilty of something, but I really don't know. Come back to Donald Trump's obvious control of the Justice Department in just a minute. But first, Cenk, talk to us about your, I don't even know if you are surprised, just your initial impressions.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not surprised, partly because Donald Trump has been announcing over and over again, I really want prosecutors to take out my political opponents. I don't like James Comey, I don't Brennan, Chris Wray, Letitia James, and we're going to tell you in a little bit on the show about how he meant to send a private message to Pam Bondi and it accidentally made it public about, you're taking too long to prosecute my political opponents. But based on what, brother? They have to break the law, right? So basically he's telling them, just make it up, right? So in this case, like for example, Brennan was part of the national security team of Obama. And can I believe that Brennan has done some things that should be investigated? Well, I could believe it. Like Brennan's a bad guy, he was in favor of warrantless wiretapping, etc. But you're not supposed to say, hey, I don't like a guy, now dig into his life and see if you could find something illegal. You're supposed to find something illegal and figure out who did it. So otherwise we're living in a totalitarian state. Like John Bolton is another one of Trump's enemies. I hate John Bolton. He's a neocon, he started the Iraq war, he's never been right about foreign policy. He basically works for Israel, I loathe him, okay? But I don't want him arrested. He's another American and we're having a debate and I don't agree with him and I'll use my right to speech, etc. So now when you get to Letitia James, so which bucket does she belong in? As Trump has said repeatedly, I want her arrested, I want her prosecuted, I want her prosecuted, puts pressures on the prosecutors. The prosecutors who are very, very conservative, very right wing, look at it and go, there just is enough evidence to prosecute her for any crime. Like we looked into this. How about mortgage fraud? Okay, mortgage fraud. We got this Pulte guy who's like a huge Trump loyalist in some housing department, and he's claiming that every Democrat, every political opponent of Trump is doing mortgage fraud. So they pull this for Letitia James to try to get her on this, and the prosecutors look at it and go, no, this is nonsense. She didn't do it, right? And I'm going to tell you why she didn't do it in a second. And Trump then says, okay, then fire the prosecutor. I don't care if she did it or not. Just charge her, right? And you're gonna see that in his instructions to Pam Bondi in a little bit on the show, right? So, okay, so why am I sure Letitia James didn't do it? In one form, she did check off the box saying that it's her primary residence. And it is not her primary residence, and you can't have two different primary residences. And so that's a violation If you arrested people on that violation, you probably arrest hundreds of thousands of people, maybe get into the millions, I don't know. But okay, it's a violation, no problem. But wait, was it an accident that she checked that box off? Or did she mean to check that box off and she did it with intent? Intent, it was what would make it a crime, right? And now, if you told me a politician accidentally checked off the wrong box, I'm gonna give you an epic eye roll. And so I'd be like, oh, come on, right? So why am I so convinced it was an accident this time? Because it turns out there are many other forms where she did not check off primary residence. She checked off the opposite, but hold. It's more clear than that. On one of the other forms, she literally wrote, quote, "This property will not be my primary residence." And she capitalized "will not." I've never seen anyone be clearer on a form that it is not their primary residence. So if she had intent to deceive, she would have checked off primary residence on all the forms. If she did not have intent, she made a mistake in one of them, you could tell by how she responded in the other forms. And in the other forms, she made it crystal clear that it's not her primary residence. You arrest her based on that, you're basically saying, I don't care if she did it or not, I don't like her, she's a political opponent, and now we're in an authoritarian government, and I'm just arresting anyone I don't like who has opposed me politically in the past. And that is kind of where we are right now.
I would have preferred you to say that in the voice. I want you to sound like him when you say that last part, because it seems like it's true. It's true. Now, this may be more of a signal that there's something manic going on with Donald Trump, because remember that urgent, almost frantic post Donald Trump made to his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the one he demanded that she prosecuted James Comey, a very long post. He's talking about how he read over 30 statements. He's saying this is the same story as last time. Look what they did to me, Pam. Look. This has to get done immediately. There's a great case. We cannot delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. Justice must be served, and on and on. So there was near instant speculation that post was not meant for public consumption. And now the Wall Street Journal is, well, confirming just that. The paper reporting Trump accidentally published that directive to his AG Bondi publicly, September 27th, 11:21 a.m. Eastern. He deleted it within 10 minutes, of course, not before it was captured in the eternal screenshots. And instead, the reporting is after she called the White House and complained and issued a help, stop. Pam Bondi is doing a great job, he posted a few minutes later. Great job as Attorney General of the United States. She's very careful, very smart, loves our country, but needs a top prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia, like my recommendation, Lindsay Halligan, to get things moving. So Donald Trump, very transparent. I don't know if he thinks he's slick when he writes things like that. Just 12 minutes later, Trump tried to clean it up, as you saw there, posting that praise-filled message about Pam, calling her smart, strong. Now, the deleted post is now being evaluated as perhaps Exhibit A, potentially, in James Comey's legal strategy to get his indictment thrown out. Trump's own words, giving a clear directive to his DOJ boss to target a former FBI director could be used to show political motivation and abuse of power. And so this isn't just about what's a sloppy, who hasn't maybe accidentally or close to it thought they were sending a DM and said they posted something publicly, but it does seem to be a window into just how far Donald Trump is willing to go and how long he's willing to wait to taste the blood of his chosen political enemies as he sees it. Ironically, though, this may have secured him the White House, this one enemy. I mean, of all people, Comey probably secured him the White House the first time around, and still. The question I have for you, though, Cenk, is anyone going to fall off the loyalty truck here? Okay, Donald Trump wants a Nobel Prize. There's the peace deal. We'll see what happens with that. The government's shut down. He's sending troops into Chicago and threatening other places. He has all of this time to still oversee the prosecution, the indictment of Letitia James. Is anybody else going to say, you know what, I'm MAGA, you know what, I was all in on Trump, but this is a bridge too far?
Maybe. Okay, so probably but it depends on who we're talking about. So first, before I get to this, Sharon, I mean, look at this, right? There's two parts of this that are amazing. Number one, he thinks he's sending a DM to his attorney general. Why are you doing it through your public platform? What are you, nuts? You're the president of the United States. You can get her a message in any way you want. Pick up the phone, email her, whatever. What? You're DMing her? You're sliding into her DMs? What are you, nuts? And then of course the clown accidentally makes it public. You gotta grow up, brother. This is like, again, if you're a Republican, you gotta be like, why are you sharing secret messages publicly? Don't you have any self-control? Can't you do anything right anyway? So then look at the message. He says to his attorney general, that political opponent of mine is guilty as hell. And all there's been is talk and no action. He doesn't say anything about which crime she committed. Hey, I'm concerned. It looks like a law was broken and you didn't, etc. No, he's just like, prosecute her. I don't like her. Prosecute her. Oh, I made it public. Oops. But then to Sharon's point, is anyone going to care? By the way, one little side note here. Lindsay Halligan that he put in after he fired the career prosecutor who's conservative and wouldn't ruin his career by taking on this case and unfairly charging this Letitia James or some of these other folks. Anyways, so he replaced him with who? Halligan. Halligan is his personal attorney. As usual, soon he's going to have like the personal injury lawyers that he used back in '87 when he got into a car accident. You know, if you've been in Jersey, the guys who run the billboards, got hurt in Jersey.com, right? He's going to use those guys. He got me $30,000 when someone bumped into my car. He's now the deputy attorney general, right? And if you say, oh, come on, Cenk, that's an exaggeration. I'm sure Lindsay Halligan has a storied career and you just don't like her politics. No, she's literally never tried a criminal case. You can't get any more unqualified for this position than that. Never tried a criminal case. What is she doing here? Her whole job, and by the way, there's a public corruption unit, and Trump is using it in the exact wrong way to do the public corruption. It used to have 30 people in it. It only has 2 now, both Trump's personal attorneys. So Rando Bob and Rando Jane are in there going, yeah, we're gonna only charge Democrats. It doesn't matter if they did it or not, right? And then how about the actual corruption? There's tons of corruption from Republicans and Democrats, right? There's people stuffing gold into their suits and stuff like that. Are you gonna do anything about that? Oh, no. No, it's a twofer for Trump. Everybody gets to be corrupt, and he loves that. And then, but he prosecutes his opponents. So, look, so all the non-Trump voters, the people who voted against Trump, we all see clear as day what he's doing here. That's not an issue. It's not like somebody's gonna be like, hey, you know what? I voted against Trump, but now that I see that he's totally misusing American law and ignoring the Constitution, I'm in. Okay, that is not likely, right? So now you look at the Trump voters, usual thing here. Guys on the right that are extreme love this kind of stuff. Yeah, they came after us. They did it the wrong way, so we should double down. And because 2 wrongs or like 18 wrongs, if you pile them all up, then make it right. No, they don't. No, it's called principles. You should look into it. Okay, are there some Trump voters who get turned off by this? Yes. To what degree will they see it? To what degree will they hear the truth about it? And to what degree will it continue to add up? If it was one thing that Trump did, Sharon, then I think that it probably would not make much of a difference. But now it's a combination of things. They're bringing the military into the streets, charging your political opponents with nonsense, saying that he took freedom of speech away, which is something he said that we covered on the show today, and now something even more nefarious we covered on the show yesterday. A story Ken Klippenstein broke about how they're going to now try to call anyone who they think is against family values, against Christianity, against America, against whatever, right? All of these made up categories. And they're saying we're gonna call them terrorists and take away all their rights. So, and you saw them, oh, you disagree with Israel, you wrote an op-ed against Israel, that's it, you're arrested. And we try to deport you and put you in a dungeon and all this stuff. So when you have all of that together, I think, and then we'll see if I'm right or wrong, but a third of Trump voters didn't sign up for extremism. They thought, hey, I don't like inflation. I think the immigration is a little bit out of control, so I'm going to go in Trump's direction. When they see all this, they're going to be like, oh, and then by the way, did he do anything about inflation? No, inflation continues to rise. So eventually people know, they might not know all the details of Lindsey Halligan and Letitia James, etc., but they know the price of eggs and they know what tyranny feels like. So my guess is that this doesn't end well for Trump because he can't help himself, Sharon. He's never going to be a sane guy who's like, you know what? We really should follow the laws and the Constitution. And I don't need that much power. I just want to be a president within the normal confines of the presidency. And I want to push my agenda through because I really want to help the average American. That's not who he is. He's the guy who's like, more power, more power. No one criticizes me. You're arrested. You're no one. I mean, power. Put the military in the street. That's who he is. That's who he is. So, and the more he locks people up, the more unpopular he's going to get.
So just to be clear, you believe it's a cocktail of all of these self-destructive actions. It's not the Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking up about now healthcare and the thought of millions of Americans losing it or having their premium skyrocket. It's not just Epstein, although that is, again, his self-imposed, his destruction here. It's all Trump. It's not the MAGA people that he's made to walk the plank, like, the prosecutor, his name has escaped me, who said, there's nothing there on Comey. Now he's fired.
Yeah,
I think you might be right.
Yeah, last thing on that, Sharon, I'll clarify it this way, and this is super rough, guys, okay? But I love the question Sharon's asking, because super roughly, a third of Trump voters that are on the extreme right, you're not gonna get them on anything. Trump says it, they believe it. Trump says there were no Epstein clients, and they're like, yep, no Epstein clients at all. Whatever Trump says is 100% true, and I don't want to listen to anything else. I don't even think it's a third, but it's a number. It's a big number, but it's a third. Then there's 2/3 who will agree with us when they agree. Like, so we agree on Epstein files. So Trump can say there are no Epstein files, and that 2/3 of Trump voters are going to go, no, brother. We said we know there's Epstein. We know there's Epstein clients. And that same 2/3, like, come on, brother, you seem like you're constantly doing whatever Israel asks you to do. And we didn't say war, we said non-war. So those, on issues where we have significant agreement, those 2/3 are potentially can join a bigger coalition. On issues like this, going after his political opponents, you're down to a third of Trump voters where you could convince them. It's not like they're gonna see it immediately, be like, oh, that's it, I'm against Trump. No, they're gonna have to see that cocktail that we've been talking about. And that it's all adding up. And wait a minute, my Marjorie Taylor Greene's right, my premiums are doubling. I thought you were gonna help me with prices. And now my healthcare is unaffordable, everything at the grocery store is higher, and you're taking away people's rights. And you said you were for freedom, but it looks like you're taking away people's freedom. That third is more convincible and does not like these things and didn't know that it was coming. That's my rough sense of it.
It'll be interesting. Is Hillary Clinton next? Well, he doesn't like her either. He's gotten off of her lately for the Boltons of the world. We're gonna take a quick social break and we'll be right back.
Let's go to Super Chat first. Mikey3343 makes a good point. Cenk, there are Americans who didn't vote for Trump but now support him because of his lawlessness. The Republicans in Congress. That's funny in a couple of ways, because you're right, they didn't want him, they wanted a more establishment guy. But now that he's like abusing his authority, they're like, ooh, stovetop, I'm staying. That is an old school reference. All right, make it make sense. Says TYT is better than this. This ass man, weird fringe person, is obviously a nobody. That's like when the right claims all Democrats are like the fringe blue-haired weirdos saying unhinged leftist things. But A, brother, I didn't say he was representing all the right. In fact, I said the opposite, okay? And B, I thought, and I even said in that segment, he probably has like 13 radicals watching him or something. But I found out during the break, no. His videos oftentimes apparently get 1 million views. So apparently a lot of people watch him. So
this was my ass.
So everybody makes this mistake. Democrats do, Republicans do, Israelis do, but so do all other types of nations, etc. Right? Turks do, right? Which is they think whoever the other guys are, the bad guys. But not only that, whoever's on my side are all good guys. No, not everybody. Even though you might be on the right side, depending on which of those conflicts or debates you're on, it doesn't mean everybody on your side is a good guy. Some of them could have bad intent, etc., etc. So I've been trying to clarify that for everybody. Wish me luck. Okay. Acid Brad wrote in on Twitch, calling people terrorists or insurrectionists sounds like Trump is taking a page out of, I read that one already, out of Israel's playbook. They're taking a lot of pages out of Israel's playbook. That's why the occupation of America feels more and more oppressive every day. AJ Nestor says, instant peace plan, stop giving Israel money. Yep, and all of the media and all the politicians act like it's a giant mystery. Can't figure it out. How can we get Israel to listen to us? I don't know. Maybe cut the $4 billion a year that we give them, or the 21 billion extra we gave them during the genocide. Wow, I'm a rocket scientist, I figured that out. But to them, they're like, not following Israel's commands is unthinkable and anti-Semitic. So our options are, what do we do within the confines of having to follow every Israeli order, okay? So our establishment is sick. All right, somebody named their handle after my cat. Meowser's Claws, the established meownt, wrote in, look, Trump is just really against crime, whether it exists or not. Okay, maybe that's what I was missing. Anyway, Just Read a Book says, I've been telling my friends to tune into TYT. They're wondering if the 8 p.m. replays are available after now. Yes. We're putting them up online on our YouTube channel. But if you're a member, by the way, you can get all of our replays anytime you want. The whole show, the bonus episode, the post games, everything. Nicole Cox says, I've been watching for about 6 months, but just joined yesterday. I just wanted to give a huge thanks to TYT team for their work in spreading truth. I appreciate everything you guys do for our country. Well, Nicole, you're amazing, and I appreciate you. Thanks for being one of us now. Young Turks members makes this possible. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Sharon, Gerwelk, Erica America, and Deacon Wallace. You guys are all amazing. First to join through tyt.com/join. And Deacon Wallace, thank you, brother, for donating. Look, we stopped taking donations last year, as I've been telling you guys, because I don't want you to get exhausted, and I would prefer not to, right? But we have been under a lot of pressure because of taking on a lot of powerful people. So if you have it in your heart to do that, we love you for it. Everything is obviously optional, but we do love it when you take that option. Mainly, we appreciate it. All right, Sharon, what's next?
Yeah, people, it seems, with this network and family do it because they believe and they want to. So I second that, much appreciated. Golden Graham is next.
We got a 1-year extension. Why don't we sign on right now?
Let me ask you a question. Did you get permission from your boss?
Why don't we sign on right now?
Did your boss, Donald Trump?
You can easily extend the ACA right now.
Did your boss, Donald Trump,
give you permission? He's not my boss.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not. And by the way,
so let me ask you a
why
question.
did you vote to shut the government down? Why did you vote to shut it down?
Let me ask you a question.
For years, you always lectured about how we need to keep the government open.
You're making a show of this to make yourself relevant.
It's sad. You could easily sign on to this.
You're embarrassing yourself right now.
You could sign on to this. The only embarrassment here is you.
You're an embarrassment.
My bad, we'll relabel it Jeffries versus Lawler. You saw it right there. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Republican Congressman Mike Lawler got into it yesterday over the ongoing government shutdown. Cenk, what is your take right off the bat? Some people are saying it was staged. I don't know if it looked like that, but I don't know. There's passion there, perhaps.
Yeah. So who won that debate? Correct answer, neither. And so Hakeem Jeffries kept saying you're embarrassing yourself, but I thought, yeah, no, both of you are. And not because they're yelling at each other in public. I don't mind that at all. And it's what they said and what they did that I think is wrong. So let's tell the folks what it's about, and then I want to come back and tell you why I think neither one of them is quite right.
Yeah, so Lawler was confronting Jeffries about his refusal to support a bill that would extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies for 1 year as part of the effort to reopen the government. Now, the credits expire January 1. The bill would extend them through the end of 2026, notably after the midterm elections. Not all Republicans are even on board with Lawler's plan. House Speaker Mike Johnson has said any extension of the subsidies would have to be accompanied by major changes to the ACA, or else he will not bring the bill to the floor for a vote. And on the other side, Jeffries has been clear that he wants a permanent extension on the subsidies, not a temporary fix. He told reporters this week: what world are these MAGA extremists living in right now to think that Democrats are going to go along with a 1 year extension from a group of people, meaning the Republicans, who just permanently extended massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors? It's laughable proposition. It makes no sense. The Democratic position has been clear: permanent extension. And then let's go from there, he adds. And today he doubled down, saying our view is that we need a meaningful response to addressing the Republican healthcare crisis, not simply a Band-Aid solution that Republican leadership in the House and the Senate don't even support right now. So with all that in mind, let's now watch more of this confrontation.
The largest cut to Medicaid in American history. You voted for that.
Fraud and abuse, by the way.
You voted.
Tom DiNapoli, the Democratic controller of New York,
Let me ask you a question.
Pointed out that $1.2 billion were wasted.
Listen, you're not going to talk. You're not going to talk to me. You're not going to talk to me and talk over me because you don't want to hear what I have to say.
Oh, I'm listening.
So why don't you just keep your mouth shut? You voted for this one big ugly bill.
You can extend it right now.
A permanent extension of massive tax breaks for your billionaire donors.
So 90% of Americans.
So they can get a permanent extension.
90% of Americans take the standard deduction.
Is that right? Why aren't you running for governor right now?
Because I actually enjoy this job, and I'm here to do it. And by the way, you could actually pass.
You enjoy being a lackey for Donald Trump
now.
I've indulged you. I've given you your 15 minutes.
You haven't answered any of the questions.
You're a complete and total embarrassment.
Yeah.
You're embarrassing yourself in your district right now, and you're going down to defeat next year.
Class dismissed. Of course, both men are trying to capitalize on the altercation. Mike Lawler is already fundraising off of it. He sent supporters a link to this Win Red page asking for their donations. Even with the government shutdown, look what Mike is doing. He is still in Washington, D.C. for you. And he talks about Hakeem Jeffries briefly. And then here's Hakeem Jeffries. Some random Republican tried to come from me in the halls of Congress. Things didn't work out well for him. They also called Lawler an irrelevant individual. So the name calling, which reminds me of someone else who does it, I guess, better than anybody else. What do you think here? Because as I recall in recent days, Cenk, Hakeem Jeffries did say he wanted to debate Mike Johnson, who rejected that. Could a debate, not in the hallway, perhaps not speaking over one another, benefit the American people?
Yeah, no, I didn't mind Hakeem Jeffries asking for a real debate with Mike Johnson. A lot of people thought, oh, that's clownish. Nah, I don't mind it. I'd love to hear them, be on national TV and have a real debate over it. Because I don't, as bad a debater as Hakeem Jeffries is, I don't think Mike Johnson can win that debate because he's going to force millions of Americans to have their premiums double. Then people aren't going to like that. You can try to pretty that up any way you like, but that lipstick ain't going to help that pig. So in terms of this breakdown, are they doing it on purpose? Jeffries said at one point, you're making a show out of this. Hakeem, did you not notice all the cameras around? Like, yeah, you're both making a show out of this. And so why are they making a show out of it? Because number one, these days, in the old days, you only raise money through corporate and foreign government donors and you serve them. These days, good news, bad news, you could also make money by doing outlandish things and getting on TV and then getting your own, and then sending emails to your own side going, oh, I've been attacked by Hakeem Jeffries. I was attacked by a Republican in the hallways. And then you're gonna raise a lot of money and stuff. And then Hakeem wants to show like, I'm a tough leader and I'm fighting for the Democrats, right? So they're obviously doing it on purpose in front of the cameras. I've seen Hakeem Jeffries be challenged many times and he just walks away. He doesn't want any piece of that. In this case, he's walking right into it because this serves his political purposes too. Like the first thing he started with, you're doing this for your boss. Trump is your boss. And then Lawler says he's not. Of course Trump is Lawler's boss. On the other hand, that's not the win you think it is. Like real people know that all the Republicans serve Donald Trump. You're not proving anything with that point. Inside Congress, the representatives pretend that they're independent. That's why Hakeem's saying that, even though like no actual person thinks they're independent. By the way, was Hakeem Jeffries independent during the Biden years? No. When Biden told him, his boss told him, shut up and pretend I'm young and dynamic, Hakeem Jeffries pretended Biden was young and dynamic because Biden was his boss. I mean, who's he kidding, right? On the other hand, fair is shown in America, even though I don't love Apex Shakur, Hakeem did land one good blow, make one good point, and that was on the substance. He said, look, I don't know if you guys heard it clearly enough, but this is the thing I would have emphasized. And he said, look, you're offering as a compromise, you're gonna double everybody's premiums, but you're gonna delay it 1 year, by the way, right until after the 2026 election. And then if they win again, then you're gonna feel the pain, right? But they're like, oh, that's not a bad idea. We'll look like we're compromising and we'll delay the pain till after the election. We'll trick the American people one more time, right? So Hakeem Jeffries is saying, but wait a minute, you guys said that you wanted the tax cuts for the rich to be permanent and you did make them permanent. So when it comes to the rich, everything is permanent. But when it comes to relief for the average American, that's only 1 year. Right, and it's a political trick, and he was totally right about that.
So, do you think that Hakeem Jeffries should have done what he's done in the past, as you referenced, and just walk right by Lawler?
No, I just would have done a better job debating. Okay, so
okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and he complained about the other guy talking over him. I mean, you guys have seen me. Ain't nobody talking over me. Okay, so if I was in that situation, I would have been like, so you're gonna double people's premiums. You hate the average American. So admit you hate the average American, you're gonna double their premiums. On the other hand, you love the rich. You love the rich, right? You increase their taxes, their tax cuts. All you did was tax cuts for the rich. Mike Lawler, why are you for the rich and against the average American? Answer why you want their healthcare premiums to double, because that's a fact, Mike Lawler. Why do you hate the average American? Tell me why you hate the average American. Tell to the cameras, right? But you got to be as aggressive as me to do that, I guess. He's only the leader of the Democrats in the House, so I mean, knowing how to debate. He knows how to collect money though, he knows that. But anyway, overall, he had one good point, Lawler had none. I give the battle to Hakeem Jeffries. Am I not merciful? All right, we gotta go. So we're gonna take a quick break here, we'll be right back. Apparently today's Middle Eastern Day, so I kind of like it. Reminds me of my roots. All right, thank you, Bart. All right, so let's go to members on tyt.com. Jenks Left Tricep Fury wrote in earlier, no, we wanted the genocide to stop too, Donnie. And it seems like Don Donald Trump didn't quite get that. Lobbyist for Big Poor says, so the way to demonstrate against this would be mass flag burnings, or could it be exactly what he's looking for? Looks bad for him when protesters are carrying flags, but it will look bad on protesters burning the flag. Yeah, don't get suckered into falling into Trump's trap by going, oh yeah, I have a right to burn the flag, so I'm gonna burn 12 of them. No. You have the right, that doesn't mean you should do it. You also have the right to say the N-word. It doesn't mean you should do it. Right? So don't fall into that trap. Boober Dragon Cat says, I've seen this clip numerous times now, and I don't think Jeffries came out on top. And then Wang Jun says, what's more cringe? Chuck Schumer trying to make a KFC joke, or Hakeem Jeffries pretending he has a spine? Okay, that's funny as usual. Hypocritus Noah writes in, Hakeem the scheme didn't drop any Biggie verses. I'm appalled. Hakeem the scheme, is that new? Okay, I kind of like that. Certainly better than Charlatan the fraud. That's what he called Charlemagne after Charlemagne nicknamed him Apex Score. Okay, Don Data Dragon, I'm reading this blind. Earlier today, RFK announced that circumcisions were linked to higher autism in boys because they take Tylenol for pain management. Is that right? I missed that. Oh my God, Jesus, man. I used the opportunity to remind everyone that this is a distraction and highlighted Senator Khanna's HB 3546 drug price reduction bill. The more we talk Tylenol, the less we talk about the medications that matter. What we said last night only fails if we don't try. Well, I love that, brother. And coming up at the top of the hour, we're gonna do it again. Okay, so Operation Hope, our crowdsourcing of the revolution continues, the second night. Coming at you, love that you're participating. Irish Fiddle Dragon says, holy hell, Lawler is my effing representative. This is the person with whom I'm corresponding with the Operation Hope initiatives. He's never cared that his constituents are mostly Democrats, but you have this wet mop Jeffries trying to verbally spar with him. It's unbearable. Well, first of all, do something about Lawler being your representative, which I'm sure you will, which is go out and vote, right? And then I am Maddie OO writes in on YouTube member section. As far as I understand, James made one mistake on one doc, but other docs were correct. Different universe from Trump, who had coordinated plan to be deceptive, maybe for 30 years. 100% right. Simon Moody says, so Trump getting the square footage of his Trump Tower flat wrong just once by 2 feet would be enough to prosecute him, right, Pam? And of course, the reality is Trump didn't just get it a little wrong. He would sometimes inflate the property values by 4x, 4 times what they were worth. Trump's a con man, so he assumes everybody else is a con man. Okay, and I am out of time except for Sid Sent. Thank you for gifting a membership. And Jen Stenson, you're awesome for becoming a member. We'll be right back. All right, TYT, Cenk, Sharon, next.
Let's see if we can squeeze this one in. Now, Golden Graham.
So what's your plan for the illegals that are in this state that get free benefits?
They don't.
If you listen to what she was saying. No, just hear me out. If you listen to what she was saying, at its core, she's angry about the exact same things you are. Yes. People are propagandized, people are misinformed, but people are not stupid. And we shouldn't treat them as such. People are being robbed. They're being robbed of their critical thinking. They're being robbed of their empathy. The answer to that is not shame. The answer to that is not anger. The answer to that is empathy and compassion.
Graham Platner there, he's running for Susan Collins' Senate seat in Maine. He's already gotten a lot of attention thanks to his populist positions. Cenk, I want you to react to the video, and it's not just because we're in this conversation, but some of what he's saying there reminds me of some of the things that you've said right here.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I thought it was picture perfect. I mean, that was as good an answer as I have seen any candidate give, because it doesn't alienate voters on the right, or more importantly, the middle, right? And it doesn't blame the voters. It tells you what the core of the problem is. Perfect and very populist, love it. So the good news is he's done so well. He's raised $4 million and we can finally win that Senate seat in Maine. That's why here comes Chuck Schumer to screw it up. He's like, oh, I want somebody to run against him in the primary. What? He's a great candidate. And he has all the metrics that you care about. Oh, he raised a lot of money. I thought you cared about money. No, they don't care about money as much as they care about bowing your head to the donor class. So they're trying to get Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, to run against them in the primary to make sure that a populist doesn't get into the Senate and actually serve the people. Democratic leadership has not learned a single thing. They're like, no, we need the establishment. Ancient, by the way, what is she, 77 years old? They're like, bring her, wheel her in. She'll do whatever the donor class wants. I don't know if he's just afraid that Graham won't listen to Israel or to any of the donors. But it's ridiculous for the Democrats to try to hurt this candidate that's already doing excellent in Maine. Sharon, what do you think?
I think they can't let it creep in, okay? They've got to control the party messaging, the donors, all of it, AIPAC perhaps, and their commitment there. They cannot allow this in. It's like having a more Bernie, AOC, and suddenly this thing starts to move in a direction that they can't control. I love what he said there. He snapped me back. I occasionally get off course when I'm watching cable news all day and can't stomach some of the things that are being said, but Chuck Schumer's got to go.
Yeah, and Graham Platner agrees, and that's why Chuck Schumer is bent out of shape. Hey, let's go win this seat and let's actually serve the American people. Enough establishment candidates. Give me a lot more of Graham Platner. Love to see it. All right, guys, we're gonna take a quick break here, but come right back, free and live for everyone. We're gonna continue crowdsourcing the revolution. I got great updates for you guys. We'll be right back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur with you guys. All right, so for those of you who didn't see it yesterday, we're trying to crowdsource a peaceful revolution. And so what we're gonna try to do is unite folks, left, middle, right, on things we agree on and see if we could actually bring change from the outside. Has this ever been done before? Actually, one time by Jon Stewart. He put so much pressure on Congress from the outside to fund the health care of first responders on 9/11. The sick, corrupt politicians, after talking about 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, had cut the funding for healthcare for those first responders. And Jon Stewart did such a brilliant job of putting pressure on publicly that they said, oh yeah, we meant to do it. Yeah, of course, we meant to serve the American people and the first responders. They got caught. That was the first time that I've ever seen anyone catch them from the outside. And so I love it, and I think it could be done again and again and again. Again, look, you'll have the skeptics, no question. In fact, we did the first episode yesterday, and then I checked out some of the comments, and I don't know if it's like Israeli bots that are doing some sort of talking point or some other disaffected weirdos or something, but they're like, oh yeah, you want us to do this revolution together. Well, I'm not gonna pay you. Who asked you to pay me? We literally said the exact opposite. Normally, paying members pay for this bonus episode, and normally we don't do this. We do more stories, we do personal stories, etc. But in their infinite generosity, in my opinion, they were like, no, let's make it free to everyone. So look, every part of this is optional. No one asked you for money. No one's asking you like, oh, you have to do this. If you like the idea and you think that maybe we should try, maybe we can regain our democracy, maybe we can work together, then do it if you want, do it if you like, right? If you don't like it and you just want to make fun, by the way, that's okay too, God bless. I don't mind. I don't need the whole country to do it. We only need, actually within the scope of the 350 million people in America, we need less than 1% to actually try this together. And if we try it together, I swear to you, we're gonna get the results. I saw Jon Stewart do it. We can do it, I'm positive of it, okay? And again, I think I can show you how, and we are gonna go step by step. So now that brings us to the second step today. So yesterday I laid out what the program was. Today we're gonna be more interactive, okay? And today we're gonna do something where we're gonna try one thing together if we can, okay? So and a whole bunch of you wrote in yesterday with suggestions, and I'm gonna touch on some of those. I liked some of those. I want to talk about whether we should do some of those, and I love what you guys are doing in that regard. But if we can, let's do. Kate, do you have Mark Pocan's graphics? So if get them ready, don't put them up yet. So we've been one of the things that I suggested yesterday was, why don't we try to lower drug prices? You say, oh wow, that's impossible. You got big pharma, they're even bigger than AIPAC, way bigger. They control almost all of Congress, etc. But good news, Ro Khanna took a Donald Trump executive order verbatim, turned it into a bill, and that would actually give us the drug prices that other developed nations pay, which is way, way, way lower. So it would do a great job of lowering drug prices. There's no reason for Republicans to object. This is Trump's executive order. No reason for Democrats to object because it's completely Democratic policy. Great, Trump and the Democrats agree, wonderful, so let's get it done. So how many co-sponsors does he have now? By the way, it's called HR 3493, Global Fairness in Drug Prices Act, right? So how many co-sponsors does Ro Khanna have now? 3. Okay, so that's the name of the act, and Don Data Dragon already wrote in during the show saying that he already pushed it out. I love it, and we have a tool that you could use to do that in terms of emailing your representatives, and that's tyt.com/drug prices. And what you'll see is there's already a little bit of a script. You can change it any way you like. You can write whatever you want, but always be polite, guys. I'm gonna talk more about that in a second. But if you're a Republican, send it to your Republican congressman. If you're a Democrat, Democratic congressman, but or any congressman, and ask them, hey, if they're Republicans, please pass this bill, which is Trump's executive order. If they're Democrats, please pass this bill that is core Democratic healthcare policy. Okay, so this is an interesting list of the folks who are co-sponsors of this bill. You got Ro Khanna on the left, and you got Marcy Kaptur on the left, and she's a solid Democrat and progressive largely throughout her career. And then on the right, you have 3 people actually 5 overall. Elijah Crane, Republican of Arizona, Andy Biggs, Republican of Arizona, very extreme right winger, but he's like, Trump's executive order, yeah, I'm in. And then the 5th person is Representative Luna Anna Polina, okay? So, and she's on board. So those are 2 very right-wing folks. I don't know much about Elijah Crane, but okay, that's a good start. So you got 5 guys, but 5 out of 435 members of Congress, they should all be on board for this. So that's why we want to reach out to them. So today, we're gonna try something where we all reach out to the same person in all these different ways, including social media, and that's Representative Mark Pocan. Now, why are we picking Mark Pocan? Is that because he's a bad guy? No, we're picking him from the exact opposite reason. He's a really good guy. He's a good progressive, and I'm sure that he's in favor of this policy. I'd be shocked if he wasn't in favor of this policy. So it's like you'd be surprised at how little communication there is within Congress. And as long as leadership isn't pushing something, sometimes a really good idea will just stay dormant there. So in the most polite and friendly way we can, let's all in a sense, you're helping Representative Pocan. Hey, Representative Pocan, we know you're a progressive and we know you like this idea. So can you sign on to be a co-sponsor of HR 3493, okay? So we got his social media, can we put that up? All right, so on X, he's Representative Mark Pocan. So Rep Mark Pocan, Mark with a K. On Instagram, same thing, Rep Mark Pocan. Facebook, just Mark Pocan, okay? So reach out to him in those ways. Do not be impolite. He's a good guy. There's no need to do anything wrong. Just say, hey, there's this great bill, Global Fairness and Drug Prices Act. Can you help, right? And if you want to email him, remember that's easier in a sense because we already have that program that allows you to do it automatically. So tyt.com/drug prices for that, okay? So now, this started from Operation Hope, which is a lot of great Young Turks viewers who've been trying to drive for positive change now for well over a year. We worked on the main ballot initiative to get money out of politics and it passed and that felt great. And so some of them might start to gather up some volunteers and help in that regard. But they can tell you, they've sometimes gotten people to sign on, representatives or candidates to sign on to the populist plank that I couldn't get. So we're gonna see if combined we have a little bit more power than individually. So, and guys, as I've been saying throughout, I'm not promising any results, I'm promising effort. So I don't know how many of you guys are gonna reach out to Representative Pocan on social media and how many are gonna email him, and I don't know how much of a difference it's gonna make. But what's interesting and amazing about this is we're gonna find out together, okay? And if, by the way, if one method fails, then we'll try another method and another method, right? So this is the first thing we're trying in terms of reaching a specific congressperson. And again, we're picking him because he's a good guy and likely to respond. And then if that works with Representative Pocan, then we'll go to the next representative and the next representative, and we'll do both Democrats and Republicans, okay? Imagine it works, how good will you feel? And then you will definitely get to say, I did that, right? Imagine it works so well eventually that we get a vote on the bill and it passes, and then you have lower drug prices and so do your neighbors, your family, and your friends. You walk around town like the most proud person in America because you will have participated in democracy and moved democracy and gotten real results, not just for yourself, but for all Americans. And that'll be a beautiful thing if we can get it done. Okay, so again, write in today and I will tell you guys, I'll interact with you more. Oh, I see, they can email Pocan through the website if they live in his district. So that's if you live in Mark Pocan's district in Wisconsin. But otherwise, and here's another thing, guys. If you know a better way to reach legislators, you're going, oh, Cenk, you're asking him to do social media or email. No, there's already a program that does X, Y, or Z. Write in and tell us, okay? No pride of authorship here, guys. We want you to come up with better ideas than us and better methods than us. All right, just real quick on the members, one last thing about that, and then I'll go to some of the suggestions that you guys had. We did a poll, right, of should we make the bonus episode free and public for everyone? And 73% said yes, 19% said not sure yet, but I'm open to the idea, and 8% said no, I like the traditional bonus episode format, and I don't blame you. A lot of people do love it, and I appreciate that. And in fact, one of you guys wrote in and convinced me. Who was it? Oh, it was Patience. A couple of you wrote in, but Patience made a really good point. She said, hey, you guys sometimes talk about the old days when the bonus episodes were more personal stories, and whenever you do that on either a bonus episode or an old school, I really love that, and a lot of our members do. You know what? Okay, so we came up with an idea. Look at how interactive this is. Your idea turns into this. At the end of all of these episodes, I'm gonna do a story of the day that is just for our members. So that doesn't have to do with Operation Hope, it doesn't have to do with this campaign. And by the way, like for example, today we have an interview coming up at 5:30, so I'll do it after the interview, okay? So whatever's the end of the day, I'll do about 5-10 minutes on a story of the day. And today's story of the day is, and if you're right wing, but brace for impact, remember, we're on the left, we're working together, but I'm on the left and most of our viewers are on the left. So I'm gonna tell you how I changed my behavior because of what ICE is doing. And I noticed that I changed it. I was like, oh no. So that story is from when I was in Chicago. I'll tell you about it at the very end of this stuff. So end of this and end of the interview. Okay, you get it. So now let's go to some of your suggestions. Okay. First of all, I asked for polls showing that the American people think the politicians are not honest, that they mainly represent their donors. We couldn't quite find the one where they had that great question, do you think the politicians represent their donors or their voters? And 93% said donors. But there's many other polls and they're all sky high numbers, right? So for example, Impeach for Peace wrote in yesterday saying a Gallup poll asked, how much influence do you think each of the following has on how members of Congress vote on legislation? Among 4 groups, major donors got a lot of influence responses than people in their district. 64% said donors have a lot of influence versus only 14% for their constituents. So that's a much lower number than one that I cited. But even if you take, that's the lowest number I've seen. But even then, 64% say they represent their donors. Only 14% say they represent their constituents. How broken is this democracy? But there's one more poll. Eclectic found this one. I don't know if this is what Cenk is thinking of, but a Pew study that says 80% of donors have too much influence on elected politicians. And 73% say lobbyists and special interest groups have too much influence. Large majorities of Republicans and Democrats alike say campaign donors, lobbyists, and special interest groups have too much influence. So that one's got it at 80%. So at a bare minimum, 80% of Americans say donors have way too much influence. 100% of mainstream media says no, they don't. No, they're having real debates and none of them are crooks that are just taking money from the donors and doing as they're told. No, and if you say that, you'll be fired from mainstream media. We need access. We need access to the politicians. Here at TYT, we don't need access. Politician does the right thing. Ro Khanna on this drug bill, Tom Massey on opposing Israel's genocide. Super happy to give them credit. But if they do the wrong thing, which is 95% of politicians, we rhetorically, verbally kick their ass. Okay, never physical, never violent. I'm going to say that 100 times. Always peaceful, okay? But we are going to engage in democracy aggressively, verbally, rhetorically, and politically. Okay, so by the way, guys, there you go. I asked you to be our research department. You're our research department. I asked for polls, you give me polls. I love it. I love it. That's how we work together. Okay. And others volunteered different things, and I appreciate all you guys. All right, so questions. Just Read a Book said, do we email Pocan daily? Yeah, that's a good question. Look, I don't want to get to the point where it looks like we're harassing them. Could there be a time for that later? Not physically, but verbally, politically, could, but this is definitely not the time. We're being polite here, so whatever you think is a cadence that makes sense to you, right? So if you were a representative and someone emailed you every 5 minutes, you'd be annoyed. You'd be like, all right, dude, I got it. Hold on, I didn't even get a chance to respond yet. But if it's an important thing and it's something that I'm likely to agree on and they remind me once a day, yeah, that might make sense. We're figuring this out on our own, right? And you guys tell me, hey, if they wind up having a good reaction, great. And then I got to come back out here and go, stop. They already said yes, right? So, but until you hear that, yeah, as politely as you can, remind them daily makes sense. So, and it's better than emailing just once, as Cara is pointing out. Yeah. So, all right, good question. Looking for Hope says, I sent mine. I love this method. TYT is amazing. This is where my hope is. Strength in numbers, guys. Well, thank you, appreciate that. Don Dada Drang says, Cenk, could you please clarify for me? You said HR 3493 is the bill, but I also saw another bill by Senator Khanna, HR 3546, Prescription Drug Price Relief Act. Did I accidentally reference the wrong bill? No, you got the right bill. Ro Khanna is prolific. So he has so many bills. Like other congressmen are like, oh, I introduced a bill in 2008. So, and I do constituent services, right? Ro Khanna is like, I introduced 12 bills today and 8 the day before and 12 the day before, right? So that is in fact a different bill and also a good bill, But why are we focusing on the one that lowers drug prices in the way that I described? Because that's Trump's executive order. So the Republicans have no reason to object. We're trying to find things we agree on, right? By the way, if Republicans and independents saw Khanna's other bill on drug prices, they might love that one too, but that's for another day, okay? But look at you doing the research. I love that. You're looking it up already and seeing other things that are up there. So great. All right. Interesting. And guys, I'm gonna have to read a lot of these blind, and then I want to come to some of the ones that you sent in yesterday. But let me do this one from Twitch. Salty Almond 9286 said, former congressional aide here. Congressmen will only be influenced by their constituents. It also doesn't matter how you contact them. You'll be a tally for or against. It's nothing personal. It's just that a congressional office gets hundreds of thousands of comments / requests a year and has a staff under 20 people. You only count on one issue once. Also, signing a petition does jack because we don't know if people are real or in the district. Okay, so that might sound like, oh wait, that sounds pessimistic or depressing. No. This person is trying to help us be more effective. So now look, I think I get a couple of things out of that, and Salty Almond, if I've got it wrong, right back in, okay? But my sense of it is what they're saying is if you're in the district, great, awesome, wonderful, that's gonna count a lot, right? I would argue call in and write in even if you're not in the district because it gives them some sense, like there's basically, they just said they're telling yeses and nos. So all of a sudden a ton of yeses show up, it's at least gonna grab their attention, right? Now, on the other hand, it seems like they're saying, don't do it every day because once you call in and you're one person, they've already counted you. So, and fair, and they worked in a congressional office. But I think that tallying of the yeses and the nos is the biggest takeaway. So let's pile up a whole bunch of yeses and see if because especially in the case of Mark Pocan, because I think he's likely to agree, it just probably hasn't caught his attention. So let's see if we can catch his attention and get him to say yes. Oh, here, look, see, I knew it. Now we're getting somewhere. Ford Country 420 writes in, Mark Pocan appears weekly on Tom Hartman's show, and they take calls on the air, so that would be a good way to contact him. So look, Tom Hartman and I used to be really good friends and allies. He's a smart guy, he's a good progressive. During this election cycle, we had a little bit of a falling out because Tom was disastrously wrong about something. That's my interpretation. So who cares? The past is the past, okay? So if it's on, hey, can you tell us which day Mark Pocan's on Tom's show? Because then I'll have you guys go watch Tom's show and call in and ask Mark Pocan if he can do this, if he hasn't said yes by then. And I'm gonna repeat it for a billion times. And we're gonna ask him as friends, not enemies, right? And so, and he's never said no, that's super clear. He just hasn't had a chance to voice his opinion on that. So if we don't reach him through social media or emails, we'll call him on Tom Hartman's show. Perfect, beautiful, okay? Guys, when it works, you're gonna love it. And you're gonna feel really good about it. All right, let's see what happens. KG writes in on YouTube, love this idea, TYT. His office met with me in DC about mental health for students. See, that's what I'm telling you, he's a good guy. He's the most likely to listen. I didn't pick him by accident, okay? KG also wrote, it's all about the staffers. Reach out to the staffers and get to know them. They're the ones that bring ideas back to the legislators. Another good point, KG. So when if you get them on the phone, be polite and say, hey, we're on your side and we believe in Representative Pocan and we think that he's likely to sign on this. We just wanted to let you know. And if you get into a little bit of a conversation with the staffer that's friendly, that's a good thing. That makes them more likely to support you, more likely to bring it to the representative. So we're starting to build those muscles for how to reach our legislators and for how to do democracy. Okay. Sid wrote in yesterday, I love this idea, Cenk. Get users to upload an infinite scroll with search. I want to help with the design. Oh, that's about the kids in Gaza. And a lot of people wrote in about that. All right, let's try something on that too. So And maybe another person wrote in, maybe we could use AI for this. Guys, I wish I could do this more efficiently, give you all the credit you deserve for whoever comes up with the ideas. But so many of you wrote in yesterday, I'm just trying to synthesize it, right? But can someone out there find a list of the names of folks who have died in Gaza and send it in to us? So at least that's a starting point. And can any of you out there find a list of children in specific who have died in Gaza with their names? And so that's point one. And you could always email us if you found something at hope@tyt.com. That's hope@tyt.com. Okay, very simple email address for you to send in that information. Then I came up with an idea based on what you guys sent in, as I said. And I thought, hey, we already know one name, right? And that's Hind Rajab. And so she's of course a 6-year-old girl who was killed by the IDF, and they killed the ambulance drivers that came to rescue her, et cetera. There's a great movie about it from Watermelon Pictures. Got like a 20-minute standing ovation in the Cannes Film Festival. It's heartbreaking to see what happened to her. But so we got this website, kidsofgaza.com. Do I know how we're gonna take your stuff and put it on there? No, I don't. Are we gonna figure it out together? Yes, right? So somebody has her picture, send it in. And if a lot of you send in her picture, that's okay. Could we find her picture on our own? Yeah, but participate, right? But okay, so that's the easy one. Slightly harder one, although it's out there in a lot of places, is her bio. Just like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs about who she was and what happened to her, okay? And then, at the end, we tell folks and I'm not quite sure how we're gonna do this, and we'll do it in social media. I don't know if we'll do it on the website, but whether they've passed away or they're still alive. And in her case, we obviously know that she's passed away, right? But she could be the first person we put up on kidsofgaza.com. And then maybe we could take that and put it up as a social media post on TYT. Or if some of you turn it into a social media post of your own, maybe we just amplify your social media post, right? And remember guys, we can't do every idea and we can't amplify every social media post, but we can do some. And so if you've got a great one, great, wonderful, let's all push that one out. Let's like it, share it, etc. So I'm like, maybe by tomorrow we'll already have it up on the website, or somebody will already have put it up on social media, or we'll have put it up on social media, and we'll try our first one and see what the reaction is. And then by the way, after that, if we do it tomorrow, then on Monday, I'll tell you how it went. And that's, by the way, another interesting mystery. So are the posts gonna get 13 likes and not be a big deal and it didn't work? Or whoa, 200,000 people saw that post, 2,000 people shared it, etc. I don't know, we'll find out. Okay, so I like that we're building on these ideas. Eddie Jameson made a point about primaries and how he's gung-ho on pushing for that, because we were talking about primaries yesterday. Dominic the 7th maybe, saying he's starting an independent party in upstate New York because he can't stand the Democrats and the Republicans and they never do anything for us. Look, brother, give it a go. I want everybody participating in democracy. Okay, Ford Country 420 wrote back in, Pocan is on Tom Hartman's show on Wednesdays. So watch or listen to Tom Hartman's show on Wednesday. If we haven't already gotten Mark Pocan to say yes, and call in and politely ask him to sign on to HR 3493, Global Fairness in Drug Prices Act. Global Fairness in Drug Prices Act, okay? Sutton says TYT needs a hashtag to amplify members' posts. There it is. Yeah, hashtags don't work as well as they used to, but they can still work in some instances. So that's a good point. You guys suggest hashtags, both for the drug prices one and for the Kids of Gaza one, okay? And we'll pick one and we'll use it in social media. Jack Callahan I sent that in regarding Gaza children. All right, thank you, Jack. Nice job. I did see your name on the list. That's right. Good point. Churche Delanosa says, Cenk, maybe Palestine Children Relief Fund people can help you get those names. So that's a good point. Plus, I know the guys at CARE, right? That's the Council on American Islamic Relations, and maybe they could reach out to their followers because a lot of them have family in Gaza. So, all right, now that's good. That's what we want. So, both Cara and I will. Kara's saying it's better for people to tag us. I hear you. We'll try both. We'll try both and see what happens. Anyway, Kara's our community director. Kara Smith. She ran a race in the middle of Nebraska, nearly beat Don Bacon, and she's an amazing community director. So Kara and I will chase down those ideas. So Palestine Children Relief Fund and CARE to see if they can help with this project. I mean, Jesus, we could do this all day. You guys are coming up with terrific ideas and trying to make and getting this to work. And here we go. All right, these are done. I've only got like 90 seconds left. Corey, Jonathan, is it Jonathan or Corey? No, Corey suggested that we do crowdfunding. Hold on. We're not going to do any funding until we know what we're funding, right? So maybe that comes way later, but it has to be a good reason. But I don't want to ask anybody for money. I just want effort. I want to do this through democracy and sweat and tears, but not the first one. Others suggested so many good ideas. All right, I'm gonna run out of time today. All right, we'll synthesize more tomorrow. We'll get your ideas from today. All right, last one here. Over 9,000 wrote, can we start drafting a bill that will call for an American equivalent of the vote of no confidence that Parliament has? We need a way to hold elected officials accountable without just sitting around waiting for the next vote. So no, unfortunately, there is no such process in the American system, but voting all of the incumbents out in primaries, that's a vote of no confidence. If you're an incumbent, so last thing then, the example of AIPAC and the Israeli lobby, we have a pledge on our website, tyt.com/no-more, that if your representative has taken money from a foreign government or allies of a foreign government, like the PACs that support Israel and America, you pledge to never vote for them again. And you don't have to vote for the other party. That's why primaries are awesome. You go vote in your primary, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, and just vote against that incumbent who took Israeli money. Because you're supposed to represent us, not a foreign government. All right, we're on the board. This is our second day. Bunch of great ideas. We're gonna try to execute a couple of these. We're gonna try the Kids of Gaza. We'll start with Hin Rajab. We'll try Mark Pocan, see if we can get a win on the board. For all of you who are participating, I love you for participating. And tomorrow, I'll give you updates on it. Right now, we have an interesting interview coming up. I'm gonna take a quick break and then go to the interview. It's a person who grew up as a Scientologist, and he apparently says there's a connection to Donald Trump as Scientology. So it's a fascinating story. We'll do that when we return. All right, we got a super interesting interview for you guys tonight. Jamie Mustard. Jamie is an award-winning artist, writer, and consultant known as the Iconist. He graduated from the London School of Economics, and he's got a book, The Invisible Machine, the startling truth about the trauma and the scientific breakthrough that can transform your life. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I'm also got a book about hopefully what we're going to talk about today, which is Child X, which is behind me.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So Child X is about your life growing up as a Scientologist, right? So
I mean, yeah.
So you're going to connect it to Trump in a minute, which is going to be interesting. But your whole story is interesting. So tell us about how you grew up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way you can grow up a Scientologist, or you can grow up inside the Scientology's paramilitary, which is a kind of naval religious organization that runs Scientology. I grew on the day of my birth. I was turned over to Scientology's paramilitary organization and sent to a kind of nursery / orphanage on Beacon Street on the outskirts of downtown Los Angeles in the Rampart Police District.
So wait,
yeah.
So
I can't see you. Yeah, there you are.
Okay. So hold on. Did your parents turn you over, and were your parents not there?
My mother turned me over the day I was born to this kind of slum nursery where I was raised for the first 2.5 years of my life with little to no human touch, and in the most kind of abominable slum conditions you could imagine.
And
not far
why
from
did she
MacArthur
do
Park.
that?
Because she believed that, and still believes that Scientology is the only thing that can save the planet. In the belief, yeah.
So to this day, she still believes that after all that you went through.
To this day, she still believes that. A couple months ago, there was an article on me in the Daily Mail, and they reached out to the institution in England for comment, and they came back with a declaration from her. And the denials were also admissions. I mean, she said in my book, I say that at 5 years old, I signed a billion-year contract when I was 5 because I didn't learn to write. I couldn't write at the age of 19 when I finally made my first escape. I couldn't write a sentence. So one of her responses in her declaration and the response to the Daily Mail article was, he wasn't 5, he was 7 when he signed that billion-year contract, and it was adorable. So they started grooming me for these beliefs, before I even believed in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and I guess the Sandman, or yeah. So it's and it's normalized because it's the only world you know.
So first of all, of course, any contract signed by someone underage, let alone 5 or 7, is not enforceable. It's absurd. You don't have agency. You're not an adult. You can't sign away rights, etc. But was it literally a billion-year contract?
It was literally a billion-year contract, and they lined us all. I was living in kind of like what would be kind of like an orphanage, a military-organized slum orphanage where I didn't have bed sheets or underwear. Never learned to brush my teeth. I mean, I was basically animalized. And which I can explain later why they would do that. But yeah, they lined us up and they said, we need to handle this planet. And once we handle this planet, we're going to move on and handle the next planet. And so if you want to spend more time with your parents, we need to save Earth. And the best way you can help do that is to commit yourself basically for eternity. Scientologists believe that you come back lifetime after lifetime, that we are all trillion-year-old fallen gods that are in meat bodies as a degraded state, and that Earth is a prison planet.
Well, the last part seems to have some validity, but okay. So first of all, we're kidding, but then on the other hand, they actually treated you as a prisoner, so they became a self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense. And now that I know that you live to be trillions of years old, well, then a billion-year contract doesn't seem as onerous. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no you can't be a child in Scientology. By the time you're 2, 3 years old, you're expected to act like an adult. You've lived billions of lives or millions or billions of lives before, so you need to just remember. You're not allowed to exhibit a lot of emotion. Emotion is frowned upon, and you're not a child. You're a trillion-year-old fallen god in a baby body, and that is the viewpoint of all Scientologists.
So, what is this paramilitary group, and what are they supposed to do? Who are they going to invade or defend against, etc.?
In the mid to late 60s, Hubbard was being kicked out of England, losing his big manor estate there that he bought from the Maharaja, a 70-acre estate and manor house that he bought from the Maharaja of Jaipur. And he was so frustrated, he took to the high seas on a fleet of makeshift boats, a converted cattle boat, and maybe a couple of other boats. And he started this thing, I mean, I hate these words, make me sick, but he started this thing called the Sea Organization. And this would be the inner clergy, the religious military clergy, because he had been in the Navy and fancied himself a commander. And this would be the inner clergy that would run Scientology. And he said whose purpose was, the purpose of the Sea Organization, the paramilitary that raised me, is to get ethics in on the planet.
Okay, what does that mean? What does it mean to get ethics in the planet and to save the planet?
What it means to save the planet is that we all have these kind of subconscious reactive minds that say that are the reason we do all the crazy things in the world. They're the reason that we have conflict in the Middle East. They're the reason people commit crime or murder. They're the reason we need all disease, all accidents. Everything comes because we have these memories in our cells of pain and unconsciousness. And only through Scientology processing can one systematically remove all of these negative emotions that are below our subconscious and our reactionary mind, or they call it the reactive mind or the subconscious mind. And once you've cleared all of these things out, you create a perfect person that never gets sick, never gets into accidents, can't get disease. And that's what that person, when they've been cleared of all of these kind of pain and unconsciousness going to in utero, that person is called a clear. They're clear of all of their aberrations, and they're basically operating sanely with their mind as a perfect computer.
Okay, do they claim that that's ever actually happened to a single person?
Oh, they do, but I would challenge them to show me one.
Yeah. Because I'd like to see the flawless person too. But I'm sure that if you pay them enough money, through the donations, et cetera, that some of the celebrities seem to do, all of a sudden they'll find you pretty clear. So that's my guess.
I mean,
I just wanted to ask. So you said there's a reason why they treated these kids like animals. Why?
I think, it was a question when the book came out that people started asking me a lot. Why would they, if they want you for future labor, wouldn't they want to take good care of you so that you would be a good future soldier for them? And you would think that, but they really do believe that you've lived and seen everything before, so you don't really have to be taught, and you're not really valuable. In one of the things Mr. Hubbard said is that in Scientology, that's a Scientology doctrine, is that production is the basis of morale. How much you can produce is the most important thing in Scientology. So we could not contribute as children. So we needed to be over here in a warehouse or penned, like say you had a prize pig or you had a baby pig. You're not gonna slaughter the pig when it's 20 pounds, you're gonna wait 10 years till it's 500 pounds and you can get value out of it. So we were seen as having no value for labor. And it was the viewpoint was, let's give the minimum amount of resources here, like a pig pen, to raise this child. And then at 10 or 12 years old, it can serve as labor for us. So until we were a vessel of labor, we were penned and warehoused to grow our bodies. And I'm being as literal as I can.
So is this still going on, and can Child Protective Services do anything about it?
It's such a great question, because one of the things I talk about in the book is I was in the largest FBI raid in history at the age of 7 years old, where Scientology had infiltrated the government in the largest domestic spying campaign in US history. That FBI raid exonerated a Holocaust survivor who the church, or if you want to call it a church, the institution or organization had framed for bomb threats, and she was about to go to federal prison. So I was awoken at midnight and kept awake all night and moved around the main big blue building that you see in Hollywood. We were in dorms across the street as FBI agents flooded into the building. So I don't know if I answered the question there, but what was the question?
Child Protective Services.
Oh, yeah. So, it's an interesting thing. When the FBI left, it was a 24-hour raid, I believe. They didn't bat an eye on what was happening to us and just left us in those conditions and left us with that treatment. When I was taking the bus around Los Angeles, so this was going on under the noses of law enforcement, from the time I was a kid, in the 70s. I was taking the bus by the time I was 7, and if I was on Hollywood Boulevard or on Griffith Park, there were times I didn't have to work, or I could get away from labor. I was forced to do child labor at a very young age. But if I was trying to escape and take the bus to Griffith Park or hike to the Hollywood sign or something like that, and a cop saw this little kid walking down the street or in the park by themselves, they would pull over or come up to me and they say, why are you not in school? What are you doing? And I would just have to say the word Scientology, and they would get in their car and leave.
Jesus, man, it's so weird. Yeah. The control that some groups have inside this country, just by like bullying and intimidating everyone else. It's nuts. All right,
and by safe pointing, they hire ex-cops and retired cops. I've heard in the last year and a half this has been stopped, but for the last 30 years, they've hired retired cops and off-duty cops and paid them well to do security at their events. They hold an event at the Celebrity Center on Franklin and Bronson, the Artist Center, where they donate, called Christmas Stories, where all these celebrities that are Scientologists show up, and they donate that money to the Police Activities League. I've heard recently that my book is being entered into evidence at the police commission hearings and the public works hearings to some of the top 50 officials in all of Los Angeles.
Wow, interesting. So last two questions about Scientology, then I want to ask you about Trump, and then somehow Armenia is involved. So what are thetans?
A thetan is just the Scientology name for a soul. It's the spirit.
And so you clear your thetan or no?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated thing. So you asked a really good question, either like, have we ever seen it clear? And we haven't seen it clear. So when people still were messed up after becoming clear, and Hubbard was still messed up, he did these things called these advanced levels, the advanced kind of operating levels. He called them, the OT levels, the operating thetan levels, as you say, or thetan levels. And basically, these are confidential levels where you, the reason you still have all these issues after being a clear is because your body is covered in degraded alien souls that were brought here 75 million years ago on these planes from another overpopulated galaxy and blown up in volcanoes. And they're wandering around kind of drunk and out of it, and they attach themselves to your body. And on the upper levels of Scientology, after clear, you're literally auditing, you're doing this, they call it, you're doing this form of counseling on a machine, and it is to help you clear these spirits. I think that's what you're referring to, and that all these levels are confidential in Scientology, and I would say 95% of Scientologists have no idea about them, but it's all been on South Park. And also, we're taught that if we look at these levels before we do all the steps before, that we will spin out of our bodies and die. If we find out about these secrets about getting rid of these body spirits that attach to us and make us crazy, if we find out early without going through all the steps, we will spin out of our bodies and die. I think 20 to 100 million people have seen South Park, and what's on there is pretty accurate, and they're all alive. So I think we're safe.
It is remarkable they get people to believe that. That is just amazing. The human mind is so malleable. So then that leads to the last question, which is, how did you get out? At the age of 19, you're illiterate, can't read or write. You've been brainwashed into this nonsense, but when people get brainwashed into something, it is very, very difficult to get out of it. You believe that it's real usually, right? So how did you escape?
Well, that's really what Child X is about. I mean, it's about, child abuse and illiteracy and being in the darkest place. It's really a book I wrote for people, for humanity. It's about, can you be in the darkest place of human existence and still come back? As a teenager, I was stationed all over the world. I was in Canada, I was in Copenhagen, Denmark, I was in southern England at the compound there, and I was in central Florida. Neil Gaiman, he grew up a generation ahead of me in the compound in southern England. And most people don't even know this. In his early 20s, Neil Gaiman was the executive director of their organization in Birmingham. So he went through this stuff. He was a little older when they started the Sea Organization, but he went through this stuff. But I had been sent to punishment on their boat, where I had been forced to go to the engine room and clean a bilge. You can't clean a bilge in an engine because it always fills with oil. It's a Sisyphean task that is a form of punishment. I was kept in this engine room for a week or two until I got heat prostration and ended up in the infirmary. And then eventually, and when I graduated out of the engine room for doing well, they wouldn't let me leave because I wasn't getting a good enough product. I wasn't cleaning good enough. Then the guy that ran the engine room realized that I needed glasses and he let me out. And then I was in Potland cleaning pots in this crew galley, staring at a pot out a portal. What do you call it? One of those ship holes, and staring at the ocean outside of Aruba and Curacao. And I'll never forget flying in for punishment. I'm flying into Aruba and all these people are partying, they're getting it for vacation. And I know that I'm about to be suffering in a very, very severe way in the Caribbean. I vowed when I was cleaning pots, staring at that porthole, that I would never go back if they were gonna send me back. A few months later, I was going to be sent back for something that, it's a punishment culture. So you're always in trouble for something. And I had to literally escape. And I describe all of this in the book, but I put all my belongings in a bed sheet, pretended I was going to do my laundry. I was at a compound now that is gated. I wouldn't be able to do this today because it's highly secure, but there was always cabs there to take people to the Fort Harrison Hotel, which was the main building where people worked. And I just was pretending that I was doing my laundry. And when I saw a second with nobody around, I had this white sack with everything I owned in it, including a small stereo and all my CDs. And I ran to a cab and I changed cabs 4 or 5 times before going into a hotel in downtown Tampa and calling a relative to see what my options were. So it was a harrowing escape because they track you.
That's crazy. Did you ever see the show Severance?
I've seen episodes of it.
Because
and a lot of Scientologists tell me of people that were involved, former people, how people that were involved tell me that there's parallels that are crazy.
Yeah, like the punishments, the Sisyphean tasks, the mind-numbing irrationality of it, etc. Yeah, as you were describing it, reminded me that Scientology is almost like the severed floor of the planet. So super interesting. Now, tell me.
And there are kids. This is still happening to kids. They're not babies like me. They don't let little small children anymore. But there could be kids as young as 14 to 16 in there, where this kind of treatment is happening to them. Yes, to this day, right under the noses of the Los Angeles Police Department and Child Protective Services, and they're protected by the First Amendment religious protections. And I'm very lucky because I left not being able to use a comma at 19 years old, and 5.5 years later, through just a miraculous set of events, I graduated from the London School of Economics. So the story has a happy ending, and now I'm, the author of 6 books, and I consult all over the world.
Yeah, that is amazing, which we're gonna get to in a sec. So, all right, so tell me how Trump's connected to Scientologists.
Well, one thing that's amazing, and this is, what I try to do in my book, because I didn't want to write it, I've been living in shame, almost a double life up until 2 years ago when I agreed to do this, I would hide it. My agents didn't know, my speaking agent didn't know, my publishers didn't know. I had to do this kind of walk of shame where I called all of my people and told them about this when I decided I wanted to speak out. But one of the things when I was stationed in Central Florida at their mecca of where all the wealthy public from around the world go, the people from around the world go and do the high level advanced counseling where they remove the body spirits. You would be shocked, Cenk, at who you see there. You see Gottfried Helnwein, one of the most famous artists in the world, doctors, lawyers. Greta Van Susteren is a level 8 Scientologist.
Really?
And back in yes, she is. And back in those days, there was a guy there, and again, you would see these geniuses. I mean, physics professors, Chick Corea, right? Like really talented jazz musicians. And you would say, and I would say to myself, because I was starting to really feel like a slave when I was about 18 and a half. I was feeling like a slave. I got 3 hours of sleep at night. I was overworked. I mean, it was just relentless. And I thought I'm a slave. But I was working at the place where their most elite and wealthy public went, called the Sandcastle in Clearwater, Florida, which is a small town they've taken over. And there was a guy that would be in the office who was high level, who now is Greta Van Susteren's husband, a very famous lawyer named John Cole, who was very nice to me. And I would look at him and how smart he was. And I would say, if this is BS, because I was an illiterate kid, and I would say, if this is BS, he wouldn't be here. And again, this was a nice guy who was kind to me. So I was shocked, a couple of years ago when I read that he settled the Meta lawsuit, the Facebook lawsuit for Trump because they kicked him off for $25 million. And then, I don't know, 6 months, a year later, I could have the timeline wrong, he was made deputy envoy to Ukraine.
So a Scientologist that represented Trump and got him $25 million is now our envoy to Ukraine, but it's not like there's a war going on in Ukraine that could lead to World War III. It's not like an important country or anything.
Yeah, and I don't know, again, I like John Cole. He was very kind to me. I've never known him to be an unkind person. I just don't know what his geopolitical qualifications are. I was just invited to by the state of Armenia, by the Public Council of Armenia, to present work that I've done on trauma is actually a biological injury. It's not a disorder. And I wrote a book on it with a scientist, a doctor, and I got invited by Armenia to come and present to their ministries of health and ministries of social reform and their top physicians, psychologists, and psychiatrists. And I was just there a couple of weeks ago presenting this work and learning about and realizing how little I knew about the geopolitics of Armenia.
So why did they invite you to talk about trauma in particular in Armenia?
Because I wrote a book about that's endorsed by some of the top neuroscientists in the world, including Stephen Porges, the trauma chair at the Kinsey Institute, and Dr. Daniel Amen, a famous psychiatrist named Frank Ochberg, who defined Stockholm Syndrome for the FBI in the 1970s. He made the clinical diagnosis of Stockholm Syndrome. So about this treatment that can reset the sympathetic nervous system over a day or two. And I found out about this treatment right around the time that I'd been invited to give a speech at JFK Auditorium at Fort Bragg for Special Forces. So I've had kind of a crazy life. I've gone from where I started as a slave, illiterate, and then I was, a few years ago at Fort Bragg teaching Special Forces about communication, doing private workshops and lectures with Special Forces psychological operations on how to create better counter propaganda against the Russians and the Chinese.
Wow. But I am back to the envoy guy.
Yeah.
I'm blown away by the fact that, like, I know Greta Van Susteren like a tiny bit. We've run into each other a couple of times. We've agreed, we've disagreed, etc. Seemingly perfectly rational. I assume that her husband's perfectly rational because he's winning $25 million lawsuit. That one was a little bit easy. Men kind of wanted to pay him off, but anyway. But they function in the world. They function perfectly fine in the world. Yet they believe there are alien creatures glommed onto their body, and then they have to tell their darkest secrets to some Scientologist dude to take the aliens off of them so they can get more clear, so that they can handle this planet, this prison planet, and save it from the aliens or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, return us all to our native godlike state. But we can drop the meat body and return to being gods again, and where we can create civilizations. I mean, we have godlike powers. At the very young age, and I was getting indoctrinated at 4 or 5 years old with the stuff that John Cole or Greta would have been indoctrinated with on, early on you do these things called, they're non-reactionary drills called training routines where you practice not reacting. And back then, I've heard they've changed it, they would force me to sit in a chair with my eyes closed at 5 years old for an hour and a half without moving. And when I didn't move and I was perfectly still, I would pass. And then they forced me to do that staring at someone. And I back then, I've heard this has changed, you weren't allowed to blink. And then you do a drill where later on where people are insulting you, every kind of sexual, disgusting, anti-Semitic, anything that will get you to lose your stuff. If you're a Jew, it might be anti-Semitic. If you're a Muslim, it might be anti-Islamic. Anything you get to lose it, and every time you lose it, you fail. So you basically practice not reacting. Well, when you do that, it systematically from what I've observed, it systematically removes empathy. And that's why people walked right by us every day, wealthy and famous members of this group going to do their counseling, going to do their classes. They walked by kids in rags, not in school, and didn't think twice.
That's why they take the emotion out of the person. So they don't feel sympathy for the others that are first getting trained through this brutal process.
Yeah, and then you do a drill called objectives, which is where you're basically for dozens, if not hundreds of hours, you let someone walk you around and control you. And they're telling you you're doing this because to control your environment or others better, you have to be able to be willing to be controlled. But really you're being groomed and conditioned to be controlled. These are two of the first things that you do when you go into Scientology, which I even hate to call it that because it's just a series of maggoty constructs that have destroyed my family and made my life incredibly difficult. But Hubbard was a hypnotist, and one of his definitions of hypnotism was truth, 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 lie. Truth, 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 lie. And I talk about this in the book. So there's lots of stuff in there that you can use right away. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld talks about doing the communication course in the 70s and it really helping him. So there are lots of things early on that are really, really useful. And then when you're conditioned to those things and they're really good, workable, usable things, and then he enters something weird, you kind of accept it.
Yeah, I get it. God, that is a fascinating story. All right, apparently everybody's got to check out Child X. Because that is a super trippy story. I'm really glad we had this conversation so I could understand it better. I'm sorry that you went through that experience, but wow, to do London School of Economics and write all these books and be an expert after not having learned how to read or write till you're 19. That's amazing. Jamie Mustard, thank you, brother, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, it has a happy ending, Cenk. And thank you for having me. I've watched you for a long time and I love your show.
Oh, thank you, brother. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys, now that the interview's done, we're gonna do, for the first time, we're gonna do a bonus episode. We're going straight into it. We're not taking a break, right? Or are we taking a break? Okay, today we're taking a break. All right, super quick, and then I'm gonna come and tell you a personal story of how I changed my behavior because of the ICE raids. I'll tell you.